Well, a very good morning to you. Here we are for the third round of the Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS. It's the third of the endurance rounds and we're at the Nürburgring. As you will see, it's hard to see because mist is actually descending over the circuit this morning, but fear not, we've got 49 cars lined up to come out and play for the next 2 hours. And John Watson sitting alongside me, 15.5 degrees, but the humidity has a story, 99%.
Indeed, it's a very balmy 15 at the minute, and the humidity is extremely high indeed, and not just in the atmosphere, it's on the racetrack. It is damp, but more maybe critically above, maybe about 100 feet above the circuit, there's a large, not a cloud, it's just a fog slowly deciding, will we descend or will we not descend? And through the whole free practice session, 2 hours of it into chaos. We'll have to wait and see, but right now everybody is readying themselves in the pit lane to go back out on track, and they've been out on track, throughout Friday as well. And in fact, just to bring you up to date as to who was going quickly and who wasn't, number 2 Mercedes, as Jules Gounod was quickest behind the wheel of the AMG Get Speed car, 1:55.549. That will be the benchmark time that teams will be looking for, but not in these slightly damp conditions. As you see, cars just making their way around on their first out lap, coming up to turn 70, 17 turns around this 5.14 kilometre, 3.199 mile Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit.
And in fact, what we can already see, John, echoes of the Nürburgring 24 hours where fog stopped playing. It was sitting on the very top part of the circuit. And at the lowest point of the track here, which is the drop before you come up to the chicane, it's completely clear. It's just hovering above us. So a lot of the teams, we've got 2 hours to play in this free practice session, just biding their time, waiting for their moment to go out. There is no rush. And as you said, they were very busy yesterday on track. Started in streaming wet conditions in the morning, and then it came good by when we arrived at the track about midday. It was bright sunshine. So we're going to get what we get. But good news is, whatever weather we're getting today, tomorrow is a different day, and it looks like that is going to be sunny for the race.
Yes, indeed. We're going to have, what we'd hope to have summer weather here at Nürburgring. But even you can see the racetrack, there are patches of dry racetrack. And if we can get all 49 competitors to run regularly, we will get a drying line reasonably quickly, because although the ambient temperatures in the middle 15s, with the amount of traffic on the racetrack, we will see that dry line appearing. I mean, right now, everybody will be on a set of dry weather slick tires. It is too dry to attempt to run a set of full wets. We don't have an intermediate Pirelli tire within this championship, so you commit either to full dries or full wets. And right now, it would be a fool who would put a set of wets on.
Now, taking a look at this circuit, the Nürburgring circuit, obviously, in the background, we've got the mighty Nordschleife, but since the mid-80s, we've had what I still think of as the modern Grand Prix circuit. It really is a circuit that flows, but how do you consider this track, John?
Well, I raced on this track at its inception. There was a celebrity race in 1984. The circuit was slightly different because when you came down into turn 1, we then had an S-bend, and then you continue down into what would have been turn 4. Now you've got this sort of horseshoe loop, which comprises 2, 3, that leads into turn 4. Slightly lengthened the circuit, but also made that part, the first sector of the circuit, a more interesting one, primarily for spectators around the circuit. And there's a huge amount of grandstand areas just down around turn 1. But when I raced here, well, it was a total antithesis to, let's say, the Nordschleife, thoroughly modern racetrack with all the facilities, all the amenities that you would imagine a circuit would have. But of course, for the old dyed-in-the-wool fans of the Nordschleife, nothing will ever replace that. But I came in 1977 with Niki Lauda to do a track inspection of the Nordschleife with a view as to whether the track was suitable for Grand Prix or not. Surprisingly, it was given the thumbs down, and in part because there was a contract sitting on the table to go to Hockenheim instead. And that, I suppose, is where that story begins, and probably more appropriately where it ends.
I think it certainly does. Now, one of the drivers looking on the circuit, this is Patrick Assenheimer in the Mad Panda Motorsports Mercedes. If there is a driver here with more Nürburgring expertise than Patrick, there probably can only be about one other. He does for years, he's also raced in the long-distance races around the Nordschleife. He is absolutely on top of the various weathers. It's a bit like living in certain parts of the UK. If you're a local, you can tell what's blowing in and what's not. But he is a very, very good pair of hands for the Mad Panda Motorsport team to have, because he can just understand, is this fog going to clear? Is it not? Is the rain coming in or not? So he's a good man.
Another interesting fact that appeared at Hockenheim was the Mad Panda team had the fastest pit stop, driver change, wheel change of the entire field. And they beat the best in the paddock, essentially WRT and other teams who really generally dominate the in-out pit stop regulations changes. And they did a pit stop change in about 43, 44 seconds. And they've got a very special mechanism within the cockpit to enable the belts when the buckles detach to let the driver exit the car. The belts, it's a magnetic system, I didn't quite understand it, but it enables the belts to sort of fly away from the driver, and then the driver getting in. It's a very clever system devised by Mad Panda Racing, and it'll be interesting to see whether that was a one-off or whether they can repeat it here this weekend, because there's going to be certainly 2 pit stops, 2 driver changes. Although normally, I'm just looking to see, normally the 90, they sometimes only run.
They've quite often run 2 drivers rather than 3.
They've got 3 drivers here.
And in fact, this is a good moment.
Tom Callender, the young German driver, stepping in.
Young, I would say that again, 16 years old, stepping up from GT4. Drivers running wide. At the moment, the best laps are just under 10 seconds down on the ultimate pace. But just to reiterate, Tom Callender, welcome aboard Mad Panda Motorsports, 16-year-old German. He's not in the car yet. Obviously, you put Patrick Assenheimer out to just check the conditions. But they'll want him to get out because he's got to experience as many different track circumstances and conditions as he can. Because stepping up to GT3 is a big ask. He's been racing in the GT Masters Series in Germany, so he's got a bit of experience, but at that stage you just got to grab it all.
How much experience in your life of 16 years behind the wheel of a racing car can you have? Certainly you can do karting and you can do some of the junior single-seater championships, the Ginetta single-seater Ginetta GT championships likewise. As we watch Valentino Rossi just exit out of turn 4, getting an idea of what these conditions are like. Probably a little bit different from his home near Mazzano in eastern Italy on the Adriatic coast. So yeah, the fog, the cloud base, it is, I hate to refer to it because maybe every 5 minutes we should give an update, but that cloud base is closing in right now, and it's coming from the far end of it. I'm not sure which direction. It's probably coming from the northwest, I would say. So whether that will actually sort of envelop the circuit the next half an hour or so, we wait and see.
Okay, to give you a location on that one, if we're looking out from our commentary box opposite the pit building to our right, towards the final corner of the circuit, towards Nürburgring Village and the Schloss. No chance we can see the Schloss this morning. That is where the gloom is coming from. But riding on board with Valentino Rossi, you can just see how busy it is out there. Still the fastest lap. Now it's Nicky Tim, 2 minutes 5 seconds flat, so 9.5 seconds down, but it's busy. Everyone just wants the track time. Tomorrow is set to be sunny, but right now, wheels on the track is what the drivers need.
Yes, run your 3 drivers, get them through. I mean, some teams will do it very quickly just to give them all experience of these sort of changeable conditions, albeit come Sunday it should be bright, dry and warm. So we're still on board with Valentino coming up into turn 17. And there is the reverse view of the Italian star, the ace, the doctor, Mr. number 46. I mean, even yesterday when we came into the paddock, there was a queue of people outside the WRT hospitality, all with their autograph books, with memorabilia, the blue and yellow flags and whatever. This man is legend, whichever nation or country we visit.
Absolutely. So it brings extra life to an already very, very busy paddock. 49 cars this weekend spread across the 4 classes, and it's getting very, very tight at the top. Overall, it's the Spa winners. No doubt you obviously get a huge helping of points if you win at Spa, and it's Matteo Drudi, Marco Sorensen, Nicky Tim, and Nicky, who took that victory in Spa 24 Hours to go top of the championship by 10 points. That's 46 against 36 for the Rover Racing BMW crew of Augusto Farfus, Dan Harper and Max Hesse. But right now, with the mojo, it's Nicky Tim on the top of the charts.
Yeah, it's not surprising. These are the kind of conditions Nicky Tim will thrive in. But just to reflect back to Spa at the end of June into the first days of July, it was a very strange result in many respects, because up until the final hour, the 71 Ferrari AF Corsa was on course to take victory, but came into the pit lane for its mandatory final stop, and as it got just to the end of the pit lane, into the pit lane proper, there was a stationary car. And unfortunately for Alessandro Pierguidi, I beg your pardon, he got caught behind that car for a minute until it was able to be pulled to safety. And the cause, I understand, was as soon as the driver hit the pit lane button, the speed limit button, it cut out all electronics and the car just ground to halt. And you have to do a reboot, but the confusion in the cockpit, and of course Alessandro Pierguidi sitting there, unable one way or another to find a way around the Lamborghini. I mean, one alternative was to put the nose of the Ferrari to the tail of the Lambo, but I don't know if there's anything in the rules and regulations that would permit you to do that. And that was what changed the course of history and allowed this car to take, I mean, a very memorable and I think a very popular victory for Come To You Racing with their new Aston Martin. So let's ride on board with Nicky Team in the 007 Aston Martin car, still quickest overall by just 82 hundredths of a second. So lines up, goes right, then across to the left, then makes a later cut. Actually takes a very wide, maybe just slightly over around under brakes, into turn one. Then through the gears, up, down the gears, then again hanging out wide. The feeling is that there's probably a little bit more grip at this moment for drivers, and that's the preferred line. You saw Rossi doing a similar thing now, back onto the conventional line, the dry line, exiting in a bit of a snap oversteer for the Aston as it comes out. Then the short run down to turn 5, that corner that you can carry quite a lot of speed into, but you don't need to be too far to the right because you've got to get it back to get yourself into turn 6. And then you take this long run downhill through the curve of 7, down to the lowest point of the circuit. And it's here then you start the climb all the way back up. And this is turn 8. Surprisingly, it comes after 7. And it's critical because here you are beginning to climb, and just facing you, you've got these really quick, the 9 and 10, the S's. Now in fully dry conditions and qualifying, this will be flat. But in these marginal conditions, I think it's a bit of tippy toe and feathering. As long as you've got decent tire temperature, you could probably get through there with a decent pace. Then up into turn 9 and 10 is almost one. Then cut back again. So this is coming on to what is the quickest part of the circuit. Coming through, this will be turn 13. And this is just absolutely flat out, even in any condition, other than maybe snow, which we haven't got yet. That's probably a bit on the warm side for that. Then into the chicane, there's a couple of versions of the chicane. This is the slightly quicker version, which makes it, I think, a better spectacle. And Nicky Team is deciding, having completed yet another lap, comes into the pits just before, well, this is the inside, actually, of turn 17. And now makes his way down the pit lane. Remember the pit lane speed limit, 50 kilometers per hour, boys and girls. So get the car down to speed, otherwise you'll be penalized. And it's a bit early in the day to be giving out penalties, but no doubt somebody's, I'm sure. Let's have a look and see, has anybody transgressed? We've had track limit abuses at turn 4 for car 26 already.
That's Ugo de Vilde, Sansalot Racing Audi.
Car 36 spun and rejoined to turn 1.
Now the pace at the front has really improved. I was about to tell you Matteo Caroli had done a 2-minute 2-second lap. He just superseded that, 2 minutes 1.214. So suddenly we've gained the best part of 4 seconds as the drivers are getting more accustomed. But Iron Lynx have been very circumspect. The results haven't gone their way yet this year, but the Lamborghini crew really starting to build up, and Matteo Caroli, well, he always manages to deliver. He's clear by, again, it's small margins, just 37 thousandths of a second from the number 22 Porsche from Schumacher CLRT, and that's Ayhan Şengüven, the German-based Turkish racer. They're very close at the top, and Jake Dennis in the 991 BMW is in 3rd place overall, all very close.
Yeah, the 991 BMW, that's going to be a very strong car, albeit it's running in, I think it's the bronze category. So Jake Dennis behind the wheel currently, 3rd quickest currently, just stepping out of his Formula E car at the final round of their championship in London last weekend. He was the incumbent champion, and that championship passed on to a German driver called Pascal Wehrlein, who races for Porsche.
Yeah, there you go. Jaguar in the mix as well. Right, trying to find space on the track. The fastest driver out there at the moment is car number 63, just coming across up onto the tail of a new entry this weekend, East Talent Racing. Unusual race delivery, purple and green. Much discussion about that.
Wimbledon colours.
Wimbledon colours, and also cast your mind back to 1970 Le Mans. Willie Cowson and Gerard Larousse in the sort of hippie liveried Porsche 917.
I'm old enough to remember that one too, Bruce.
So am I, just.
So Naishon Gavin has gone quickest in Sector 1 on this current lap. So wait to see whether he can consolidate through. We're still following Matteo Caroli, who is the quickest car on a 2:01.214. The difference between first and second and lap time is small. So waiting for those second and third sectors Caroli goes fastest in sector 3 at the completion of this lap, and 2:01.112. So he improved fractionally. But Goiven in the Porsche looks as if he's got purple. He may end up ending up. That's an interesting.
It's
ending up quickest currently, and so we wait to see. This is still following the 63 Lynx Lamborghini. Goiven has gone quickest, and a 1:50.159. I beg your pardon, 1.3 seconds up. That's a lump of time of an improvement. So clearly Porsche have found not just grip, they've got it because they've got the tyre and the temperature and the pressures and all these things. You'll hear a lot about temperatures, pressures, how sensitive race tyres are to both of those values. So the Porsche's in the zone. That's a pretty impressive time in track conditions, which are still a little bit marginal. Jake Dennis looking at him in the 991 BMW.
Yeah, well, he's leading the bronze class. We mentioned he's running this weekend with Darren Lung and Toby Sowry, all British crew there, but third fastest. But he's doing the pros job in that car right now, getting it settled down. But again, as you can see, at the lower points of the circuit is where the visibility is at its best. The fog is still hanging above. It's moving around a little bit. Not everybody's rushing to be on the track all the time. Only just now 40 of the 49 runners have set times. This is Joe Van Utert, another of the Aston Martin racers. And again, they're probably just look as though they're doing a brake change there, actually, John. Have new discs out there sitting and waiting as the driver is on board.
Yeah, they'd maybe just go through a system of bedding in a new set of discs and pads. Normally you do the both together. So in the meantime, as we were talking, the top 5 have shuffled around. Carola, who 1 lap ago was second quickest, has been knocked back to 5th. And we've now got a Mercedes, a Porsche, another Mercedes between the lead Porsche and the 5th place Lamborghini. So again, that's just a function of track conditions, drivers getting accustomed, and again, referring back to temperatures and pressures, getting those into the operating zone. There is a breeze around the pit lane. I mean, there's flags all over the place, ADAC, ADAC, the German motorsport, I think to our AA or RAC. So the flags are certainly not quite standing vertical, but there is a breeze around, which is good, because if there is any fog or mist coming in, it'll help get that cleared away.
Now, one of the local teams is Lion Speed GP. Patrick Kolb go for 10th overall, and Mattia Caroli has just moved to the top, just half a second clear now, so the number 63 Lamborghini back at the top. But Lion Speed GP, they've been doing a lot of the long distance races here, and Patrick has been dipping in and out of the GT World Challenge over the years, and he's assembled quite a team to form this weekend. He's got Dutch racer Michael Verhagen stepping in, and the third driver in the car is the very talented Dane Bastian Boos. So just remember, we've got the 4 different classes, and this is running in the bronze class. At the moment, it's placed, well, a blink of an eye ago. It was 3rd in class, now it's gone to 4th in class. It's still being led by Jake Tennis in 6th overall. You might think, how is a bronze class so high up? But of course, within that category, you have the pro driver and the drivers of lower grading, and that's how they're allowed to compete in the bronze. But right now, Jake is doing the job required of him, sitting in 6th overall. Patrick Kolb, 13th now, as you can see, but making great strides on this lap, as the visibility appears to suddenly get somewhat worse.
I mean, literally, you sort of take a breath and think, well, that's improving. And then you look at the camera shot out on the circuit, and that was taken from the high point up at turn 12, looking down 13, and you could see that already on that side of the circuit, that's where the weather seems to be coming from, albeit the wind's blowing directly opposite. So let's have a little look at Lucas Auer, who's been a real star all season behind the wheel of the Winfield Racing Mercedes. AMG GT3, get it all out at one go. So that car has been quick every time Lucas Auer has been behind the wheel, and both he and Maro Engel did an excellent job again last weekend in the sprint round at Hockenheim.
It seems extraordinary. It seems like another year, another country, bright, high, soaring temperatures at Hockenheim, and here we are 6 days later, and it's 15 degrees still, 15.5 degrees, track temperature hardly budging, that says 15.7 degrees, different place.
Well, Hockenheim was what I would describe as stonkingly hot. On Saturday afternoon, leaving the racetrack, it was 37 Celsius, and it was uncomfortably hot. So here, while it's overcast and dull and whatever, but it's a lot more comfortable at 15 point whatever. Was it up to 15.5 ambient and 15.7 on the circuit? So Lucas Auer going up this is coming up into turn 11.
Yeah, well, he hasn't set a time as yet. This is his first flyer, so suddenly he'll pop onto the charts. Only 40 of the runners so far have set times. Still got 6 that have been out on the track and not set a time, including Lugi Auer, nephew of Gerhard Berger, who's really had a really, really good run. The last couple of years, he's definitely stepped up a notch or two. No wonder he's on the Mercedes books.
Yes, I mean, we noticed him at Brands Hatch particularly did a sterling job there. Again, throughout the remaining sprint runs. At at Spa 24, Mercedes didn't have the kind of result that maybe they'd look for. So Lucas Auer, and I think he's now going to go on to the beginning of a flying lap. I'm assuming that's what's happened. We've not seen a time so far. Has anything been on?
No, he's just popped into 16th place. Okay. He's 2.5 seconds down on the ultimate, but that's his sighter lap. You know, his sighter lap, and then the first flyer. Now we're riding on board the number 48 Mercedes, and that engine note, never tire of it.
It's a little bit tippy toes through turns 2 and 3. You're just having to be careful with throttle applications. And this is a very late apex, and a lot of the time, yes, you see Lucas Auer doing what I was going to describe. A lot of the inside of the curb onto the grass, then the exits. You want to get the exit out of 4 as straight a line as possible to launch you down this relatively short straight into turn 5. And again, don't get too far out to the right, because then you've got a problem to get the car back into turn 6, and then you want to get, this is one of the quicker parts of the circuit. But the back end of the Mercedes doesn't look particularly stable. Maybe just simply has only had a couple or 3 laps. And again, this issue of getting up to the correct operating temperatures. Down at the lowest point, then the climb back up. And the daunting S's, do I dare take it flat? Well, he was given, it wasn't totally, but he was having a go. And then there's, again, this short run up until you get into turn 11. And a wide sweep, then over to the left, and immediately back. Get the nose tucked in as best you can in 12. Run the curb, but be careful, track limits. That's not an area where you can really abuse track limits. If you do, you're going to drop a wheel into the gravel. So through the kink, as you come up through 13, then the big break, and this is another overtaking chance, but again, easily defended. Just watch using the curb, don't be too aggressive. And again, the exit curb always has caught people out. And then finally, make the nose dive there. You will make your apex. Let the car release on the exit to get the steering as straight as possible to get the maximum drive. And what has we got from it? Have we seen any further improvement? Looking inside,
he's moved up 5 places to, he's up to 11th, but the target time has kept on moving. Suddenly Klaus Bachler went top with a 1 minute 50, sorry, Caroli went to 1:58.1. Yeah. That was then beaten by Ayhan Şengüven and Klaus Bachler. They got into the 57s, but so too has Matteo Caroli.
There, just going out of picture, was another star at Hockenheim last weekend. Dan Harper was absolutely mega. And he's got Max Hesse with them this weekend, and Brazilian Augusto Farfus. So that's the Rover Racing entry. That'll be, I think it's a 998. So the 46 has just returned, and I'm assuming it is still Valentino behind the wheel. And he's going to stay on board. So they're going to give him a reasonable run. They may do so with the other 2 drivers, let them have a bit of time behind the wheel to acclimatise. Valentino didn't compete last weekend in the Hockenheim sprint round. He did compete at Brands Hatch in April, and he did naturally, understandably. Of course he did at his home circuit at Misano, where he and further enjoyed success there.
It would have been a flood of tears if you hadn't at Misano. The queues are absolutely legendary. They're incredibly polite, aren't they? They just stand and wait their turn, all the Rossi fans. And even here, there's a special press conference for Valentino. So he is a gift that keeps giving. He's a star. He's so charming out of the car, and he's getting faster and faster.
Well, of course, Valentino's still involved in MotoGP because he's an entrant in that. So he's still attending MotoGP, where, of course, the hundreds of thousands of Valentino fans will be as, eager to get his signature, to see him, just to have a word with the man. So he's got a foot in each camp, but he's only a competitor in this GT Endurance Series.
That amazing mix of cars in the top, as you expect. We're looking at car number 66, by the way, and that's sitting down in the pit lane, and that's one of the many from Tracer Attempto Racing, Andrei Mukazov at the wheel at the moment. He's showing with Max Hoffer and Dylan Pereira. They're running in the bronze class, and they've been having a very good season so far. They're 4th in the championship, but it's quite close in bronze, so we'll see what a good result here can bring. But just to go back to the top of the order, we've got 2 Porsches at the top, Lamborghini, 2 Mercedes, Aston Martin, 2 Audis, McLaren in the top 10 in 9th place, Benji Goethe, the driver of the car 159, and then another Porsche. So a fantastic mix of manufacturers, which is just how we like it.
So just got a quick glimpse of another of the BMWs in the WRT pit. There's the 32, and Sheldon van der Linde is out behind the wheel. So that's Dries van Voor, Charles Weerts, and Sheldon. I mean, a full pro car, and a car at any event, sprint, endurance, 24 hours or whatever, you have to have that on your possible top 6 list of winners. So just again, you can see just that tiny little snap just as he came out of turn 5, the back end not yet settled down. So van der Linde continues down the hill. We've got 55 minutes of this session remain. That's the timing and scoring. What am I talking about?
And he runs a little bit deep into the corner, then off at the hairpin. This is a car that was only set 1 flying lap. It's 10 seconds off the place, 9 seconds off the place. So I was about to say that Team WRT have done that sensible thing. They've got this all-pro crew. They know what they're doing. They're just waiting until the track conditions improved a little bit. But just a little, I'm just thinking that motion is a little quick into the corner. And then, John?
Yes, it just, he didn't get it slowed down. I mean, he didn't appear to have any brake locking, so there was no tire smoke coming. I don't know why. I mean, it just is a clear misjudgment on the part of Sheldon van der Linde. There is the BMW. So passes up again, coming through turn 12, down through turn 13. You know, sometimes these events occur and the driver doesn't let on to the pitch that he may have made a little error. But with cameras everywhere, spy in the cab as well, there's nowhere to hide. And I mean, I'll not bore you with what happened back in Las Vegas in 1981.
No, do, John.
When a certain famous Argentinian driver had a 360 out of the back of the circuit and failed to tell the team, and almost to the point, no. But TV, cameras around the racetrack, and particularly the camera in the cockpit, I think that's a wonderful adjustment. Again, very deep into turn 1. That was deliberate, I think, because he was looking for a part of the racetrack where he thinks there's going to be more bite and more grip. But it's not looking, what I would say, totally comfortable right yet for the South African driver as he comes through turn 3 and then this flick to the right out through turn 4. So it's a bedding in series of laps rather than anything that would be, let's say, committed.
Yes, it's not where you expect to find them down in 38th position overall. 46 crews of the 49ers set times. Right, sister car, car number 46, back out on the track, and Valentino Rossi stays on board, as John pointed out. This is, oh wow, look at that, running wide over the curbs, into the gravel, spraying the gravel for everyone else to land on, and one of the come-to-you racing Aston Martins next to enjoy the treat.
Yeah, no, I don't like seeing gravel getting kicked on the racetrack. It's just a function now. We've got gravel beds being reintroduced to where the track limit ends. And the purpose of it is to stop abuse of track limits. But of course, the penalty is if you drop a wheel off, then you throw a load of gravel onto the racing line, the exit. In the meantime, 163, Jordan Pepper, Lamborghini, and thinks has gone quickest overall by just under half a second from Klaus Bachler. So it's Lamborghini, Porsche, and then Ross Gunn in his Aston Martin is rounding out the top 4 in 4th position. And the top 4 are covered by 0.8 of a second.
Right, the car that was fastest in practice yesterday is the one we're looking at now. It's bright yellow, it's number 2, and it's the Get Speed Mercedes. Jules Gounod, Lucas Stoltz, and Fabian Schiller, who's the driver who has set that time. But again, that all looks nice and routine at the moment. They're 8th in the charts. They're 1.5 seconds down on the ultimate pace. But with this 2-hour free practice session, it gives the team elbow space and time to work on any little niggle they have.
Yes, I mean, although they did have runs yesterday in a prepaid session, what they're doing this morning is probably now the homework in preparation for Sunday's 3-hour endurance race. Now, I don't anticipate teams needing to change discs or pads, but what teams are doing is going through the motions when they've got the time without the pressure in this 2-hour session to go out and bed in a set of discs or another set of pads, because those actually may end up becoming your race sets of discs and pads. So Chris Froggatt behind the wheel of the 93 Sky Tempestimers for Mercedes, that's a Freudian slip. That was last year or 2 years ago, back behind the wheel of the 296 Ferrari. And I was actually at the airport going back from Hockenheim, another competitor who races in North America and races one of these cars. I said, tell me, what are they like? I mean, is it still very much a GT car? And he said, actually, these cars, the Ferrari in particular, is getting closer to what I would call a prototype race car rather than a GT. This is the evolution that's been taking place as new models have come through the various manufacturers, and this is the latest iteration from Ferrari, and it is a stellar race car. And I mean, to think that this is a showroom, a stock showroom car, that you could go to your local Ferrari dealer and purchase one, albeit this is the race version of it, but the bones of it, the foundation of it, is the stock car that you can buy from your Ferrari dealer.
Yeah, and don't forget, we just had news breaking a few days ago about the forthcoming Mercedes. Of course, the current Mercedes AMG GT3 is towards the end of its development program, and it's now been, we've been told it's coming in 2026. It was maybe a consideration it might arrive next year, but from within the AMG group, there's now a new body, a Fanatec Racing GmbH, which is in place now specifically to develop the Challenger, and I dare say that might take a similar approach to the way that Ferrari's done it with this 296 GT3.
Well, certainly, I look forward to seeing that, because taking maybe the developments going into that sort of AMG area rather than coming from the main Mercedes design office, so there may well be a bigger design influence with racing in mind. Bear in mind that Mercedes-Benz with the AMG GT3 have had phenomenal success as maybe you might say the go-to turnkey GT race car, and there's GT racing at virtually every country around the world, and you know, private buyers, whether it's GT3 or GT4 or even GT2, buy an AMG product because they know what they get is you buy it, you get the key, you don't quite get a warranty with it, but you get very much close to that, and you've got a phenomenal backup within Mercedes and AMG at every event. So it's a great car for the pro all the way down to the gentleman amateur driver.
Well, that was the real key for their peak sales and that, and the other manufacturers have followed suit with their more recent GT3 models. Right, Jordan Pepper absolutely flying through the murk. His best lap now, 1 minute 56.3 seconds. That's 0.8 of a second down on yesterday. And yesterday, of course, when Jules Gounon set the time for Team Get Speed in his Mercedes, they had clear visibility. Now for these drivers, they can see what they need to see. The hardest thing is for the camera crews to pick out the cars as they come through the murk. But conditions with this many cars on the track, 48 of the crews have now set times. You know, conditions should be fine. Any of that little fine ray, it was a little sort of very light misty rain when we got here this morning, John, but that's burnt off now.
So, purple sector, sector 1, look at the gravel just coming through the SS up there. There's a lot of gravel just offline, so drivers need to be wary of that. So shortly he'll be coming through the middle sector, which is a slightly longer sector than the first and the second, and it comes shortly as they run down to turn 13. So expect to see further improvement from the 163 Ironlings Lamborghini. So Jordan Pepper should be breaking that beam shortly. I think that's it there. So he's fractionally down, but it's probably, it's almost he's probably down by 1/1000th of a second in an overall. So he's coming up behind another competitor not in the same class. This is a pro car coming up behind. It might be a silver Mercedes. Can Pepper further improve on the 156.3? He does by 1/10 of a second, 156.2. So his personal best and fastest overall has further taken him away from Alex Malikin in the 911 Porsche, who's second quickest right now.
Yeah, Malikin just popped up at the last minute for Pure Racing. They've been having a fantastic season so far in everything they compete in. And can GT3 cars go sideways? Most certainly they can. Fantastic super slow-mo replay there of Jordan Pepper showing he really is pushing on in that Mountain Wolf-sponsored Lamborghini. But another driver doing what John doesn't want. You could say half the wheel was in the gravel.
These slow-mo shots are just brilliant. But of course, what it does, it highlights the amount of gravel that's being kicked up and put down on the racetrack. Is actually looking at just Sandy Mitchell in the Barwell Lamborghini. I think that is that the second quickest, or Sandy Mitchell in, he's quickest in bronze, I think. So Sandy Mitchell in the 78 Barwell Lamborghini, he's 6th quickest. So Lamborghini's currently 1st and 6th, and the gap covering those is currently just 1.2 seconds, which in these conditions is not a big deal. But also remember the tires that these drivers are probably running on are the ones they maybe used in that session yesterday. So these are not brand new sticker tires in any of these cars. They're being held back. Wiper, interestingly. Now, is that a sign of a little bit of misty rain falling around the back of the circuit as they come up into turn 11? I mean, that's a fairly vigorous bit of wiping.
Well, it certainly is. And just looking out the commentary box window, no other car passing us is doing what Jim Pla is doing in that Sansalot Racing Audi, but it's clearly improving that car's timing, because his first sector of the 3 has already found him half a second.
That could be a case of arms and elbows in the cockpit.
It could be,
just,
yeah.
Maybe had a quick move in the steering wheel, and he's just clipped the wiper arm on the steering, so it comes through 60.
Okay, this is Jim Pla, and he's fastest in the Gold Cup by a tenth of a second from Michele Beretta. Beretta and his Mercedes was right near the top of the overall charts very early on, but Jim Pla sort of does what he says on the tin. He gets in with any Pro-Am lineup and does a fantastic job. But yeah, he's still persisting with the windscreen wiper. One would like to think he's noticed it's going across the screen, but again, for a lot of these drivers, as we see him sweeping into the first corner, there is a lot of traffic with 49 cars now having set times. Certainly many a driver will be interrupted.
Isn't it interesting that the driver, either he hasn't noticed that his wipers are operational, or he thinks whatever is out there, this is helping me see through my windscreen better than if I didn't use the wipers. And the part of the reason is when you're racing, there is rain. Yeah, there is rain falling, and now there is now definitely rain falling. And that's going to get hairy, scary, because that's wet enough. And as you can see going through turn 6, he almost got caught out. So all of a sudden, rain has descended on, and that had just came out of nowhere in turn 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down the hill into turn 8.
Yeah, a cluster of the other drivers coming down the start-finish straight are now with wipers, some not, but quite a few now diving into the pit lane. Valentino Rossi's coming in. Nicky Tim, hair tied up, ready for action. Of course, what do you want, Nicky? You want a challenge? We'll have some rain for you. But he set some very tidy times early on for the Come To You Racing Aston Martin team, still riding on the crest of the wave, Jean-Michel Baird's team after Spa.
As we're speaking, half the field, if not more, all coming into the pit lane, realising that, we're on slick tyres and we don't want to get caught out. Jim Pla's continuing around. I mean, he's got a modicum of temperature in his tyres. There's quite a bit of rain falling. We can see that on the windscreen. We don't know how much that rain, when it lands, is it evaporating more or less immediately, or is it beginning to build up? So other competitors have decided, oops, let's get back in the pits. We don't like running in these mixed conditions. So others staying out. One of the, of course, of Ferraris continues around, but it's the pit lane now is going to be the busier part of the racetrack than the circuit itself.
49 cars have set times. Number 9 has not. That would get us up to 50. That's Thomas Drouet, who's done an out lap, but no flying lap as yet. Number 9, Mercedes, is from Boots and VDS. He's shown that with Maxi Goetz. And this weekend, Philip Ellis, the Swiss racer, who's often very busy in the States as well for Winward Racing, being brought on board there to join the crew.
So there is the view inside the pit lane, and the number 30 O-Cube Oman Racing, and that's Jens Klinsmann, Aman Al-Hathi and Sam Dahan. Sam Dahan was a pretty happy chap last Sunday night at Frankfurt Airport.
Right, let's just run down the classes, how they sit. It's only a free practice session, 2-hour session. We've got an hour and 20 minutes still to go. Outright, it's in the pro class, Jordan Pepper, the car 163. But tell you what, let's head down to the pit lane because the rain is starting to fall. We'll bring you the very best, and Antonia has caught up with Spa 24 winner Nicky Thiem.
Nicky, our Spa 24 winner, you must be very confident coming into this weekend.
Yeah, no, it's all good. First of all, good morning, everyone. Expected a little bit better weather here in the Nürburgring. Always enjoy to come here, but in the end of July we expected some sun, but it is what it is. Right now we are obviously in mixed conditions, and tomorrow it should be dry, so it's going to be a challenge for everyone. But yeah, obviously with a good feeling after Spa, with a good car. Everyone is obviously on a very big smile and big positive, so yeah, just trying to get the best of it and try and work on that championship lead.
I mean, of course, in Spa it was quite rainy and you did very well. Do you not think the same will apply this weekend?
Yeah, sure. As a Scandinavian, we love driving in the rain, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's the same for everyone, so it doesn't really change anything on that point. Again, for us, it's the main target is to to work on that championship lead now. Obviously, it's what we wanna keep, and but only halfway through. So yeah, let's see. It's really just doing the best, and yeah, that's really it.
Well, your best is all you can do. Thank you very much,
Exactly.
and best of luck this weekend.
So that was Antonio Dan with Spa 24-hour winner Nicky Thiem. He was out very early on. He set some of the very quickest times right at the outset. Always they began to be beaten. And the times yesterday, 1 minute 55.5. Today, 1 minute 56.2 so far. But again, just looking at the replays there, you can see the mist hanging over the circuit. And Nicky, always fun out of the car, but so serious on board. And he understood what he needed to do just there.
He is one of motorsport's true personalities and characters. And I mean, I know at Spa 24 particularly, he just thrives on daytime, nighttime, dry, wet, whatever. And the car, they come to you, 007 Aston Martin, currently Matteo Drudi behind the wheel, for what it's worth, and that's not really of any consequence, is 13th quickest. In fact, the quickest Aston Martin still is the 34 of Ross Gunn. But there we get a view. Now, we saw the rain falling a few minutes ago. What's now falling is the mist, the cloud bases, slowly beginning to envelop the length of the pit lane. So you mentioned looking over to our right to the tower at the Eiffel Tower. I think it's not the Eiffel Tower, but
The tower in the Eiffel.
yes, yeah, that's totally out of vision. And so only one car venturing out. That is the Grasser Racing. Lois Carboni, Matteo Lallarni, and Hyman I can't pronounce that one. Look at the gravel. That's a problem. That's what happens when you kick gravel up on the exit of turn 15. And we know in the past that gravel on a racetrack can lead to a tire getting cut down. And that's one of the negatives of gravel around racetracks. But it does slow a car down if it goes into it. And that's the principal purpose of gravel. It's not designed to be a sort of a tool to hamper your opponents, but up the hill, through the S's. And so I think everybody's in the pits except the number 19.
But it's so misty. It's so misty. He can't tell he's out there on his own. That's young French racer Loris Cabirou, and in a top kart racer like so many stepping up into racing right now. I guess maybe it's a punishment. Right, everyone else can come in because it's slightly wet. We have a little bit of rain on the commentary box window, but I think it was a flurry that has passed through. Actually,
yes, I think that came and went probably as quickly as one lap or so. But the reaction from most of the competitors was dive into the pit lanes, and so again, the view there actually isn't that bad, but that view is enhanced by the brilliance of the cameraman and the camera lenses that modern technology camera can provide. So actually a driver, he wouldn't have that view because that's looking back down towards the S's and all the way to turn 13 up to turn 12. They're coming into that, so their perspective will be somewhat different as we look inside the Rover Racing, and a little bit of a gentle discussion. Philippe Eng having a chat and expressing his thoughts and views. Sister car is a 998 with Dan Harper and all that young gang on board. Augusta Farfus doesn't quite qualify as being young, but young and hard, that's for sure.
No, certainly. No loss of speed around his foot. Nick Yaloli in the background looking this way. A serious discussion, but Rover Racing, remember, do an awful lot of other events here on the Nordschleife and the Nürburgring, so they're a little more conversant. Dan Harper's had a great time. For Max Hesser there in the middle of the shot, looking for a top result this weekend, but he's been really flying this year.
When these two youngsters, Dan and Max, are, I mean, one might describe as the junior drivers, and ultimately they will become the senior drivers. And right now, both of them do not perform like junior drivers, I can assure you.
No, they're together for, I think, about their third season together. They did a lot of the long-distance races here, so you've got lots of 4-hour races, 24-hour races, and really, the cream does rise to the top. But again, it's that tradition of BMW juniors that dates back to the very early 1970s. Thanks to people like Hans-Joachim Stuck et al. Being put into junior cars.
Well, set of wet weather tyres on the 51F Corsa Ferrari. Looking outside, I mean, the track is clearly wetter than it was. I mean, the rain has soaked the circuit, and it looks like they're going to go out and do a wet run.
Well, that seems a sensible thing to do, but we're heading back down to the pits. We've just seen Dan Harper down in the pits, and Antonia is catching up with him in the Rover BMW camp.
Dan, as far as home races go, Rover calls Nürburgring their living room. So you're pretty at home here, right?
Yeah, also I lived here for a couple of years myself, so familiar place, familiar weather, unfortunately. But I'm used to that at home as well in Ireland. So yeah, typical weekend at the Nürburgring. But so far so good. Everything's running smoothly, and yeah, it was just about to go full slicks and full dry lap times, and then it rained again. So yeah, nothing unusual here, unfortunately.
Yeah, typical. And with this kind of weather, it must be quite challenging as a driver. What are some of the adaptations you have to make?
Yeah, I mean, it just changes corner by corner. There's especially the last corner seems to dry the slowest. Also, like the first couple of corners. And then also that's what then gets the wettest quickly. So you're constantly adapting, and every lap it's changing. So you're constantly just having to adapt, which is interesting and makes the good driver stand out, I think.
Absolutely. Do you think you're one of those good drivers this weekend?
We'll see. I hope so.
We will. Best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So interesting there. A couple of years training here on the Nordschleife, living as a BMW junior, sharing particularly with Max Hesse, now Augusto Farfus with them, but growing up around Hillsborough, Northern Ireland. Would he be used to these wet conditions, John?
Couldn't comment. Could not comment. I mean, Hillsborough's a beautiful village just outside Belfast, and you're coming from that part of the province. A pretty nice upbringing, I would say, but that means nothing when it comes to getting behind the wheel of a factory BMW or a Rover Racing via the factory. But living in this area for 2 years, as Dan explained, I mean, it's a unique part of Germany, and you can have 1 minute blisteringly gorgeous summer weather, and now we woke up this morning and it's the famous mist is descending on the circuit. Of course, we are slightly above sea level here, and because there's forests all around it, you're not a million miles up the road. There's another event going on this weekend where similar kind of weather effects, because the forests around the racetrack here and at Spa, it just acts as a sort of a magnet to any weather that's coming in, and it can change literally as quickly as there. See, look how much more quickly that's. I mean, it's just unbelievable. That's going. I think I'm just working. That's out of turns. That's the final turn, turn 17. But
well,
it becomes quite difficult to identify. I just have to get my reference points. And the Ferrari, the 51, which is on wet tires, we saw that in the pit lane. So a little bit of tippy toe and not a lot of bite there when he turned the steering wheel. And I mean, just being very careful. David E. Rigo, now he is always known as a competent, safe pair of hands. But even he's just having to be a little judicious on the throttle application. Let's watch him through turn 3. Just listen. I mean, barely any throttle application whatsoever until he's got the Ferrari more or less straightened up. And then he can nail it down to turn 5. Listen again. I mean, just a little dab of the throttle, not even full throttle between 5 and 6. Need to watch the curb on the exits, because those are painted and always slippery on the black stuff. Then early braking into turn 8. Taking the very long route round, looking for a bit more bite and grip on the outside of the circuit. Up the hill, left, then right. That's where you get your heart in your mouth on occasions.
You do. Windscreen wiper clearly beating on all the cars out on the track. Only about half a dozen of them at the moment. But Davide Rigon, he has been such a linchpin for AF Corsa for years now. And as you said, safe pair of hands, very quick in single seaters. Didn't quite get his F1 break. Could have almost been there, but he has been a real rock for Ferrari over the years. But right now it is just getting a feel for what the track's going to provide on wet weather tyres. At the moment they're sitting in 15th place. There are going to be no improvements. He's not going to get close to 1 minute 58, which is the time he's set so far. Interesting to see what he can manage, though, John. Into the chicane he
Dan
goes.
Harper said, this corner we're coming to turn 17. Slowest to dry out. Let's see what happens. Davide Rigo deals with it. He's on the throttle just after the apex, but he's just sort of a constant. Then when he gets it lined up, he can nail it and then back on to start-finish straight.
Okay, I'll give you a guide on times. That was 2 minutes and 12 seconds. That is how far it's off the pace. But again, he's being cautious. And look, the front of the car occasionally washing away a little bit, but as John pointing out, absolutely on tiptoes. Just a little bit of throttle here and there to keep it balanced.
Well, there's still a lot of moisture on the track. You can see running wide coming out of turn 6. And the curbing is much, much wetter. You can see how much the back end starts to yaw around as he tries to get power on. The difficulty that Davide Rigo's got is it's not sufficiently wet to really turn on the wet weather tyre. It doesn't, wet weather tyres like a certain amount of moisture or rain on the circuit. And what we've got here is that bit between, is it too wet for slicks but almost too dry for wet? You know, you get caught in the middle.
Certainly do. So a lot of the crews just considering that's Fricadelli Racing. The cars normally run entered by Rinaldi, but this weekend it's with the full Fricadelli colours. That's the team of Klaus Abelin, and they've had such success. Don't forget that just over 12 months ago they took the first win for a 296 GT3 when they won the Nürburgring 24 Hours. Klaus wasn't driving, but it's his crew. He's proudly racing here this weekend.
I wonder, will the race director let the session continue? Because normally the criteria would be the distance between marshalling posts, and if one marshalling post can't see the next one down in the line, then that becomes an issue, because if there is an incident, you have to be able to send that message further up the line for oncoming cars. So it's probably on the cusp on that start, finish straight. Better at different parts of the circuit.
Well, I mean, John, you can see the fact the start, finish straight, and definitely the final corner. They're the highest points on the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, and down at the hairpin, it's fairly clear. This is what happened in the Nürburgring 24 Hours. The top part of the circuit was covered in fog through the night and through most of the day. The rest of the circuit, if you drop down about 30 metres in altitude, you were clear, but you have to have that line of vision.
And of course, for the 24 Hours on Nürburgring, you incorporate the Grand Prix circuit. It's not just exclusively the Nordschleife. So you have 99% of the Nordschleife, and then you got about 99% of the current Nürburgring circuit. So it isn't go out and blast around, you know, the old, you know, what it would have been 13 and a half mile circuit. It's incorporating, and again, look at the exit of the S's, how much gravel has been built up just offline.
This is, I was going to say, as you can see, it's more assuring. You couldn't for a second. This young Dutch driver is definitely one of the rising stars. He's racing with SRO Motorsport, who, again, do a lot of long-distance racing. They're very, very good at their race tactics. Slightly different, of course, in the Fanatec GT Endurance Championship. But here he is enjoying a car this weekend with Ralph Bone as one of his teammates, and Robert Renau, one of the identical twins, along with his twin brother, surprise, surprise, who run the SRO Motorsport team. But really look out for young Dutch ace Maurice Schuring. Early days in this free practice session, he was within the top 6. At the moment, he's somewhere just outside the top 20. But running in the bronze class, he's definitely going to be a factor.
So this is on to pit straight. So it's just almost lap upon lap. It either improves or degrades very slightly. In the meantime, we've had quite a lot of track limit warnings, especially down in the exit of turn 4. That's where you go from that little horseshoe extension back onto the old circuit. And also quite a lot of drivers are being pinged for pit lane speed limit violations. I mean, 50.3 gets you a penalty, 50.5. So both 96 and 97, ironically, both Rotronic Porsches have been done for that small misjudgment.
Well, an adjustment they're going to have to make. American racer Anthony Bartone comes from a family of drag racers. Decided I think, what was his quote I read once? He decided he'd rather turn corners than just go up a quarter mile straight with nitroglycerine bomb attached to his back. I think that was roughly the tone of what he was saying.
Yeah, well, we certainly enjoyed a great interview with him at Spa a month or so ago, and brings a different dynamic from North America, and the fact, you know, drag racing, which in itself is an amazing sport, believe me, and what those top fuelers are doing. It used to be a quarter of a mile. I think it's now 400 yards or something. It's over 300 miles an hour in a quarter mile. I mean, it's just unimaginable.
Blink and you miss it. Anyhow, what's worth pointing out that showing with James Kell and Yannick Mettler, they're leading the Silver Cup class. So definitely got a lot to play for this, the third of 5 rounds of Fanatec GT World Challenge Endurance, and right now it is a case of learning the circuit. Great race livery. I have no idea what the skull and crossbones on the side, maybe that's the badge. I should check that out for the Bartone family drag team, but it certainly stands out, well, as much as anything can stand out in the mist here at the Nürburgring. If you're just joining us, we're getting towards the halfway point in a 2-hour free practice session. It started in slightly slippery conditions with a low-hanging cloud. That has now got a degree or two lower. A little bit of rain has fallen and the cars on the track are now on wet weather tyres. The ultimate pace at the moment is about 10 seconds away from the fastest we had in the session. That is how much the track has deteriorated.
An interesting time, one I hadn't noticed until just have a quick look at the time. It's going second quickest is the 84 Audi of Estelund Racing, with Simon Reichter, Carol Bast and Albert Costa. Albert Costa we've seen in Lamborghinis, and actually there we're looking. Raffaele Marcello having a little munch upon something, but that's a very strong time, and do not discount Audi here this weekend. In fact, fourth quickest is Alex Arca in the Treasure Racing entry, Attempt to Racing. So what would be going on in the mind of Raffaele Marcello? So the 46 is a back out on track. I'm just looking to see where it is in the timing and scoring. It is, it's, no, that's the 32 I'm looking at. 46. Whereabouts is it? It's way all the way down. It's the 39th quickest. So Valentino is in the pits. So I think Valentino's effectively doing the bulk of this almost the first hour.
Yeah, it certainly seems. I think possibly he decided once it was wet, he might as well experience that as well. But right, windscreen wipers beating, trying to work out who's actually fastest of the drivers currently setting times. In fact, the best I've seen so far since the rain has been 2 minutes 9 seconds by Jim Pla. We saw him a short while ago. Right, another car, another team that it's very easy. Earlier you said Sky Tempesta Racing Mercedes, of course we've moved on there in Ferrari, and likewise other manufacturers have jumped from one to another. I'm trying to think, because I think I've just seen Romain Leroux and just getting used also to Walkenhorst Motorsports. So many years, we're looking at Romain now, so many years running BMWs, you automatically go Walkenhorst Motorsport BMW, as they won the Spa 24 Hours a handful of years ago. But right now, they've joined the Aston Martin crew because this new Vantage is gaining new fans all the time.
Yes, it's a big step forward for the Aston brand. And the win, of course, in Spa 24 Hours has done an enormous amount to build the confidence of those Aston Martin Valkenhorst and Company Racing principally. So they've now got a car which they think is going to put them on a level playing field with the competition, which of course has been very, very high across all the major brands throughout the last number of years. So it takes that slightly middle of the road wide exit coming out of turn 6. So still rain is falling, or rain is beginning to fall again. I don't know whether it's quite as heavy as it was some 15 or so minutes ago down at turn 8. Again, the long way around the upper. So if you imagine this is a sort of a dish bowl, the high line is the line that drivers prefer because they feel they get more grip and bite. You can't do it coming into the S's because it's really a one line in and a one line out. And if you go offline in the exit, there's a bed of gravel waiting for you, and there's a gravel on the racetrack that will drag you into that bed of gravel.
I actually sense, John, that the rain is slightly heavier than it was now because no one's really improving on time. You'd have thought they'd be getting a bit more accustomed and picking off half a second here or there as they get accustomed to the wet weather tyres, but certainly every bit of onboard footage, we're riding with Romain Leroux, the Walkenhorst Motorsport Aston Martin driver. That windscreen wiper is beating for a reason. Up to the chicane he goes. How slippery. Will he go onto the curbs? Because, of course, that's where the water likes to sit.
Curbs going through the chicane. Is the curbs on the exit? Is there a car just off the track there? That's just something caught my eye.
I think someone was just backing off, but let's take a look next time we possibly can.
We can't see it from our commentary booth because it's engulfed in mist. So, well, there we go. That's so it is raining. It's 16.3 Celsius ambient. Track temperature now just 15.9, and that is, yep, that's not a great view from that AMG viewing area.
No, that's just down overlooking
Yes.
the first sequence of corners, and right now they might as well just go and get a coffee. Come back in a few minutes because the weather keeps on changing, but this mist is hanging over the top part of the circuit, and of course here on the Grand Prix loop there is a fair degree of drop, but the times you see on the left-hand side of your screen, you can guarantee those were all set before the rain came down. So 1 minute 56.268 wasn't set by Marco Mappelli, it was Jordan Pepper in the 163 Lamborghini from Grasser. Right. Here we are, down in the pit lane, windscreen wipers beating there, and Tanat Satyanthirakul, the Thai driver, races a lot in Fanatec GT World Challenge Asia, but also is enjoying his European season. He's got a son who's competing in single-seaters here, so he's getting a fair few air miles this year.
Indeed, so it comes out, and there's Mad Panda just nipping into turn 1, and yeah, just he's got that, again, that's the wide line. You could see the car following the Mercedes, the 57, just coming out of the pit lane, so tyre temperatures will be on the lower side. So again, any sort of aggressive use of the throttle will cause the back end. I mean, these cars do have traction control on them, but normally I think a driver prefers to dial it out as much as possible because the driver wants to retain that level of control. He doesn't want the brain on board overriding his natural sense.
Right, also just worth pointing out, the reason I mentioned Tanat Satyanthirakul, he was the driver who brought the car into the pits, and as I said, that the driver going out, Dutch racer Dan Peel, suddenly flicked his number in. This is a replay of early... Well, no, it's not. It's Dries van Soor. Same car that we saw Sheldon van Linder off at the same place. We had and that has just happened right now. So suddenly, Sheldon van der Linde is feeling a whole lot better as one of the two. Now he's one of 2 team members to go off in the same car at the same point down at the hairpin. There was big discussion. I saw Charles Weerts listening in, Dries van Tor listening in. Of course, conditions are different to when Sheldon, the South African, was out in the car. It was dry then. He went off. Anyhow, Team WRT, another element to talk about in the debrief.
Mark Sampson currently 14th in the Garage 59, and that is second, I think, in the bronze category. So, yeah, that car is a competitive car in its class. In fact, you know, the McLaren overall is a very quick car. Again, as with the Ferrari 296, it is very closely aligned to what would be a prototype, you know, like an LMP2 in terms of the way the car drives and the way the feedback to the driver. So they're getting more and more and more race car than production car.
Still one car of which has yet to set a flying lap. It's still the number 9 Boutsen VDS Mercedes. Phil Ellis is now listed in the car, whereas earlier it was teammate Thomas Drouet. They've only got 4 laps on the board, so I don't know if there's been a big problem or they don't like the look of the conditions. I sense there was a problem. It might be interesting to find out what's happening. But the sister car from Boutsen VDS, car number 10, here it is out on the track. Again, not so easy to pick out in the mist.
Yeah, and you could just see under braking just how tricky that was in the sort of coming to the conclusion of turn 3, then turn 4. This is the exit of turn 4 where drivers are being penalised for track limit abuses, and again, just turn 4 pops up consistently. Yeah, I mean, turn 4 is the principal corner where we're seeing drivers being track limit warnings, and it's the natural thing to want to do, to come out of turn 4 and run out as wide as possible, wider than the track limits permit, because that gives you then a better exit on the run down into turn 5.
Just taking a look at incidents, we saw the number 32 Team WRT BMW off at turn 8, the hairpin, and 30 seconds earlier, the sister car number 46, went off at the very next corner. Both went off and rejoined, so Team WRT really clearly pushing on in tricky conditions. I sense the rain is beginning to ease, but the mist is not rising. If anything, John, it's coming down.
It sort of goes up and down by maybe about a few meters per lap. But on that subject of the WRT BMWs, the 46 and the 32, I would therefore make a deduction that probably the team is running what they would call their normal full dry weather setup. They haven't probably bothered chasing the racetrack because they're aware that weather forecast for Sunday, it's going to be a beautiful day, and that would include qualifying tomorrow morning.
And again, it's an all-pro lineup, so
yes,
the drivers can handle it. You don't have to acquiesce. Right, again, red and white, that's the race livery of Fricadelli, the meatball racing team as it was known for years. Nürburgring is its speciality, and David Perel on board, disappearing into the mist there in the treble 3 Ferrari, also knows it very well indeed. But at the moment, that is down in 36th position. 49 of the 50 cars that sets time. Set times. We're still waiting for the number 9 Mercedes.
And they've had a further driver change, having not recorded. Well, they've been in and out, but Max Gertz has now been put in behind the wheel of a car that's still actually, it's been out and in, but it's not done a time lap.
You wanted seat time? Didn't specify you wanted it on the move.
But you know, do they really need to do an awful lot of running? I mean, what they've done on Friday, I'm just looking at the camera lens there, rain on the lens, so whether it's raining all around the circuit, it doesn't appear to be raining here on pit straight, as we see the Ferrari, and that doesn't look as if it's bothered much by any little localized rain around the track. Again, running wide on the exit of turn 6, but keeping it within reasonable grounds.
Yeah, just going back to double checking where the number 9 Boots and VDS Mercedes was yesterday, mid-order, in fact down in 31st position, 1.3 seconds off the pace. So they do sort of need to get out, but maybe they're just confident. They've looked at the forecast and go, when we go out qualifying tomorrow, it's supposed to be fine.
Yep. I mean, these conditions are not going to help you prepare your car for the race. Conditions yesterday afternoon most certainly would have done so. But again, it's a process the teams go through. They've got a 2-hour session. We're now into the second hour. We've got 53 minutes of that second hour remaining. So slip slide around the circuit. And again, I'm assuming that everybody still has kept a wet weather tire, but looking, there's enough of a dry line on this coming into the final sort of end of sector 2, sector 3, to me to say I would be back out in slicks.
Yeah, well, there's still time of plenty. Over 50 minutes. There's 2-hour sessions remain. Cars still starting to sliding off the track. Another one went off and back at the hairpin about a minute after we saw Dries van Tor. Was car number 111, the CSA Racing team entered by Arthur Rougier, and it was Romain Carton who went off down at the hairpin. But for a lot of the runners, they're sitting in the pits waiting their time. Remember, the first car to go out on slicks was this car, Davide Rigon's number 51 Ferrari, still down in 15th place because, of course, nobody, slicks or wets, has got better. Do we think that's onto slicks again?
That was on the wet still.
Oh, still on wets.
Still on wet, yeah. So the number 2 AMG Team Get Speed Mercedes, Lukas Stolz, Jules Gounod, Fabian Schiller on board, Lukas Stolz behind the wheel. And let's have a look and see where that is. Oh, it's down in 19. I mean, it's almost irrelevant as to what, in terms of lap time, these cars are doing. But get your drivers in. You never know. Whatever the weather forecast says now, at Nürburgring has no respecter of long-range forecasting. Even a 24-hour forecast, Nürburgring doesn't respect.
Right, you mentioned Maxi Götz getting into the bright yellow Mercedes, not the one we're looking at here, which is number 2, but the number 9, the number 9 entry, Maxi Götz. It's black and silver and yellow, sort of largely actually Belgian racing colours there, as you would expect from Boots and VDS. But that has now got a time on the board, still 50th, but anyhow, actually as fast as anybody else has managed in these wet conditions, 2 minutes 9 seconds. So on the ballpark for now, it is slightly irrelevant.
So Lukas Stolz plus 6 seconds over the fastest time, but that's the fastest dry weather time, because that's the way the timing of scoring works. It doesn't measure against the fastest wet weather time. So the fastest time in that sector was some 6 seconds quicker than Lukas Stolz has gone through sector 1 on, which is, and he's going to come into the pits.
Yeah, and again, just looking at the incident time on the timing screen, car 46, that's Valentino Rossi, out and back at turn 8 at the hairpin. It's still the bogey corner for Team WRT, but I think your synopsis, John, about the dry weather setup is prescient. Right, the mighty Ford Mustang, 17th overall, Fred Vavich. Well, he's used to rain, of course, all those years racing here, but most notably on home ground at Spa-Francorchamps. But great to have the Mustang in the mix this year from Proton. Sounds fantastic, looks super mean.
Had it at Goodwood 2 weekends ago. Fred Vavich was there, rip-roaring up the hill. And I love this. I just love the Mustang. I love its noise.
You know, for a long time in the DTM, the German Touring Car Series, there used to be a couple of brothers, the Ruch brothers. They ran a Mustang. It was nowhere near the pace. It wasn't entered in a level like GT3, but it was a crowd favourite. They've always loved big American muscle over here in Germany.
I guarantee you, they had a ball, those two guys, because they weren't competitive against the Audis, the BMWs, the Mercedes. Oh, and overruns. No, he doesn't. He gets it through, I beg your pardon. I'm looking at the slower of the two entries into that chicane. That's used, I think, for MotoGP or for certainly World Superbikes, because they want to really get the bikes slowed down. So there we go. He's running onto the damper part of the circuit now to make sure that he doesn't burn up those wet weather tires. So coming down into turn one, again pulls it back onto the traditional line. So to see run the very wide line, pretty much everybody's been doing that. Looks slick and slippery down into and through turn one.
Well, taking a look at the graphic for top speed, Team WRT BMWs, the cars that have been going off just the once each, down, well, twice in case of 32, down at the hairpin, they're fastest and second fastest. So number 32, Sheldon van der Linde, 248. These will be times, speeds more to the point, set when the track was dry, obviously a little more circumspect right now. But again, many different guides around the circuit, how you extrapolate the information to build up the perfect lap for your drives to deliver is a question for the engineers. But clearly good straight line speed from the BMWs.
That rumble, I tell you. It is it's the beat. And if you could record that and put a set of, you know, something on a double bass, a natural double bass, something in the keyboards, maybe a little guitar thrown in, think of the music you could make.
Well, I just remember when they had the launch images of that, the first moving images of the Mustang GT3, it was all about the sound, and that ticked a lot of boxes for Jim Farley and the gang. So they went, yeah, that's going to work for Ford as they put the blue oval back on the sort of global racing scene.
I mean, it is a physically large car, and it certainly looks, I would say, taller than most of the contemporaries. But it's not what the skin looks like, it's what's under the skin. And I had a look at this car when it first turned up at Paul Ricard earlier this year, and looked into the cockpit, and I thought, it's like a spaceship, it's like a space shuttle in there. Multimatic are the people that are behind the development, as they are behind the development of many brands in different categories around the world. And it is just a spectacular car, and I just only see the progress that they're making this year, rolling into 25, and being serious challengers, contenders throughout both sprint, but particularly as they're focusing right now this season in endurance.
Yeah, and young Sebastian Priaulx, son of Andy Priaulx, multi-title driver, has just stepped down from a drive in the States to concentrate on his development work for Multimatic. It goes to show that that's got to be a big program for a young racer to step down from their race program at this point in a season when going well. But we'll see what comes next. Right, car number 77, again, like so many, this is running in the Gold Cup, but top of the table. It's the fastest in the Gold Cup. It's Yusuf Awega, young German racer. It's Mercedes 1-2 in that class. And again, time's quite separated, but in the Gold Cup, it's one of the smaller categories. I think just the 5 cars entered this weekend, but all part of the mix, all those different levels. You've got the pro class, you've got the gold class, the silver class, and the bronze. And largely it's the pro and bronze classes that are packed out, but we'll keep a lookout for those through the course of qualifying and the race in the various classes.
There you saw the 2 options into turn 1. The Aston taking the long way around, the Mercedes taking the slightly tighter way around. The long way around is actually longer in distance, but it enables you to get on the throttle and carry more speed, whereas the short way around is a shorter distance, but you have to wait until you get the car more straightened up before you can chase the throttle. So basically it was like an even Stevens between the 2 drivers and the 2 different brands.
And running so close, you've actually got to consider, are you helping yourself in terms of setting a lap time, or are you hindering yourself? But this is free practice, 2 hours of free practice. We've got just over 3/4 of an hour remaining. The rain came through, the fog came down, the rain came in. The rain appears to have eased now, but the mist has not risen more than a few feet, I would suggest, sitting particularly over the start-finish straight, which is the highest point on the Grand Prix circuit.
Just noticed the BMW 46 Valentino Rossi still behind the wheel, making its way into the pit lane, so that car's still well down in where we would imagine it would automatically be. So again, sort of referring back to that comment or observation, a guess, an educated guess, that the 32 and the 46 in particular will be running with a setup which is not suited to the current conditions we're having to cope with.
air temperature has risen just not even half a degree since the start of this session. We started at 8:30 local time, going through till 10:30. Track temperature, again, that's gone up by about the same, by about 0.4, 0.5 of a degree, but basically it's the mist that's hanging over the circuit. It's a bit of a problem, not once the drivers are on the track, because of course their line of vision's a bit better than some of the high shots we're getting, but the rain coming through has sort of interrupted proceedings and made life really rather difficult for the drivers.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've just thinking about the WRT BMW, I suspect they're not the only team who have, oh, and there we are, the 111 Audi. Now, which part need I get a wider? I think is that in turn 2 and 3. So, Romain Carton in CSA
Racing. Is it the final corner? No, where is it?
I think that's turn 2.
Yes, I think you're right.
So it's come out of turn 1 and entered turn 2, and for some reason it's just off track. I assume that he may have had a sudden rotation, and then he'll come through into turn 3. So irrelevant now because this lap has been spoiled. So just regroup, refocus, and continue on.
Yeah, good looking race livery, the black, the gold and the white, running in the gold class. Romain Carton, he's down in 34th position, but from his point of view, he's running 3rd in class. But these times are, because it was dry early on, is not any use now. There's very little chance anybody is going to actually improve their overall position within the top 50. So I think we're stuck with Marco Mappelli at the top in his Lamborghini.
Mark Sanson on board the garage, 59. McLaren is the quickest of the McLaren entries, in 14th, again, a time that was set in the dry conditions. So just giving the driver time behind the wheel. You've still got plenty of time remaining. There's still 43 minutes to go before the checkered flag comes out, and I think the race director's done a pretty good job in demanding and changeable conditions, mainly more of the visibility than the fact that the track has been damp, then it rained. Those are things that are up to the driver to handle, but the visibility thing is something that is in the hands more of the control of race director, but he's managed it extremely well.
Particularly for drivers stepping up from single-seaters, from GT4 up to GT3. Yesterday, they had full wet conditions in the morning, full dry conditions and sunshine in the afternoon. This is something else. So these are all elements they have to learn about competing in a GT3 class car. So they're gaining. For the top pros, they know how to drive these cars, they understand these conditions. It's just about the minutiae, but I would suggest definitely for the less experienced drivers, this is actually a real helping hand. Of course, they probably want to be out in bright sunshine, easy conditions, but they'll be learning as they go, and that, John, is invaluable in a young career.
I mean, every lap you do of a racetrack is information that you stored away. You may refer to it at a later point. You might refer to it later this weekend even. So, I mean, the track now has got to be surely a slick tyre track. But nevertheless, McLaren's wiper is, so Mark Sanson must believe that there's enough moisture around that he wants to clear the windscreen. But it doesn't appear to be raining. It just appears to be that mist at the high point in the circuit. It's so much moisture within that mist that he's having to clear the windscreen. Right,
suddenly noticed the best lap in these tricky, greasy conditions was 2 minutes 8.5 seconds. Now suddenly the 98 BMW down in 31st position. Marco Wittmann from Rover Racing's done a 2 minute 5.8. So suddenly we're getting some quicker times. Does that mean he's already got slicks on and he's starting to pick it up? We'll see.
Haven't got a clue, but I think you're right.
Good, we'll go for that.
There it is. I suspect that is. I mean, I felt that the racetrack is probably balanced, is now switched over to a slick car, a slick tarred car. And you can see coming up through the S's, clearly a dry line. If you go off the line, well, that's a different matter. But coming up the hill and making your way into turn 11, so Marco Wittmann will not want to stray off the dry line in this part of the racetrack, but he's got an opportunity if he wants to find a way around the Lamborghini. Or he may decide just I'll sit behind it. I'm going to have a nice long run down into turn 1 to just get myself into position, up through turn 13, then up into the tight chicane, then turn 17. But turn 17 will be the key for Wittmann. So he wants to get himself as close to the back of the Lamborghini, but he's coming into the pits. So all that sort of thinking on my part, a waste of time.
Yeah, it was worth it as an intellectual exercise. Also going well, Alessio Rivero, 2 minutes 6 at the moment. But there was
listen, look, I can see more now on the pit straight than I could see a couple of laps ago. So there's much, much better visibility. Just simply, it's risen up above the circuit.
Yeah, looking out just to the point where the cars would normally go left and left again. The Sabine Schmitz curves that take them out onto the Nordschleife. Suddenly we can see the spectator banking behind that. We couldn't see that about 2 minutes ago. So conditions changing fast. Still can't be entirely sure we've got slicks fitted as yet. But the fastest time in the drive was 1 minute 56.2. The fastest we've seen since then is 2 minutes 5.7. But then, as soon as we thought that Marco Wittmann might improve on that in his Rover Racing BMW, he went into the pits. Now, looking at, it's either Dan Arrow, or used to race as Dan Pijl, but I'm told that Pijl, P-I-J-L, is Dutch for arrow, so he's got that as his racing name now. Is out in the number 57 Mercedes, but Tathian Sirical had definitely been out in that as well. But again, it's just about time on the board. But in fact, it's now Colin Carasani in the car, the second of the Dutch drivers, who's topping the Silver Cup in terms of lap times. 12th place overall, and the next car in class is down in 10 positions further back, which is the number 55 Porsche. So for the 57 Mercedes crew, it's looking quite tidy. That's from Winwood Racing. Sitting pretty at the moment, but what does it count for?
Yes, I mean, the racetrack clearly now is a slick tyre racetrack. There you can see the lighter coloured, you know, I call it tarmac macadam, but it's not tarmac macadam, it's road surface or track surface. So anybody who's on a wet weather tyre is just going to be burning it up for no purpose whatsoever.
Yeah, half the field thereabouts out on the track, half sitting in the pits and waiting quite wisely. This isn't going to gain you any position on the grid. This is just about getting a feel for the car. 2 minutes 4.6 now. David Perel is the fastest driver out on track. We had sight earlier of his Fricadelli Racing Ferrari. But with all the dry times from earlier on, that car good only for 36th position overall. But just remember, that's running in the bronze class, and it's 1, 2, 3. It's about 8th in class, but it matters for not, because we get to qualifying tomorrow. It's about the feel for the car. John talked about the fog rising. It's come down a little again. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. Like an elevator, it goes up, goes down. Here, it's clear as gin. I mean, it's literally coming through turn 13 all the way up to the chicane. Not a hint of it, but literally 200 meters to the right of our picture, and there you see the beginning of it. It's descending again. So there is the number 30 BMW, and that is OQ by Oman Racing, Jens Klinsmann, Ahmad Al-Hathi, and Sam Dahan, and Klinsmann behind the wheel. So is there any further improvement in that car's performance? No, it's currently 38.
Yeah, well,
it's one place ahead of the 46 with Maxime Martin behind the wheel. So that's the first time the 46 has seen a driver change since Valentino Rossi took the car out at 8:30 this morning.
They finally prized the steering wheel from his hands. Right now, David Perel, I mentioned he in the number 333 Ferrari had done 2 minutes 4. He's now faster still, 2 minutes 3. That's the treble 3 Ferrari out on the track, probably about halfway around the lap. Looking at 96, one of the Rutronic Porsches. That's Julian Andlauer. In fact, a short while ago I was mentioning Sebastian Priaulx relinquishing a Porsche ride in the States, and the young French ace has taken that over for the next round of the IMSA Series. But right here, right now, looking very nicely balanced in the Rutronic Porsche. 6th overall in the dry times. But this is his sort of outlap after a while in the pits.
Yeah, no, and he seems to be comfortable with the conditions.
All right, listen to team radio from this car.
It's still drizzling, or it's kind of started to drizzle again, just to let you know. But yeah, the track seems to be okay for slicks. Obviously still not for very good lap times, but probably the slick will be the faster tire.
Okay, copy. I think we have to stop because it doesn't really make sense to drive anyway now.
Okay, that was the voice of experience. Marco Wittmann sitting aboard the 98 Rover Racing BMW with an all-pro crew again. What's the point in risking anything?
I mean, just looking at those up-close shots of the BMW, that is such an amazing piece of engineering. I mean, the whole body is carbon fiber, and we saw that at Paul Ricard when the 32 had got tagged early in the first hour, and the rear bodywork eventually peeled off on the Mistral straight. The reason it peeled off is because it's carbon fiber. The outer shell is carbon fiber. The basic body shell itself is metal, of course. But just I keep looking at the front of the BMW in awe. Whoever created that design definitely is a clever guy, or in this case maybe a woman. But it's a very, very clever piece of engineering.
Yeah, again, you look at these cars race all around the world in GT3, you know, effectively guided by the Stefan Rattel organisation, but it's when you see them taken apart you really appreciate how they're not just really what you could pick up at your local showroom. Clearly you can see they've got larger wings, great aerodynamic addenda, less so in the GT4 support category, but they are phenomenal in board. You talked earlier, John, about the 296 GT3, took it to another. Now, the drone has great vision, and it can show us what it's like looking down. That's up in the fog. We're looking down at the lower parts of the track, John, that are not in the fog. This is the descent to the hairpin.
Yeah, coming out of turn 4, in fact, down into turn 5. But the drone has been given a license to fly. I mean, I suspect the drone operator hasn't got a license to fly in fog. But anyway, listen, he's got it up, and we've got great images coming from the drone, and the drone has been one of the great innovations that we've seen introduced this year in the Fanatec GT World Championship, or Champion Europe, powered by AWS. So I love that drone shot, and we got some great images at Hockenheim. We got some great images at Spa. We've had great images throughout the year.
You know what I absolutely love about the drones, John, is if you've been watching or even attending a circuit for years, you don't always work out how everything fits together. You get up high, you can see exactly where the paddock is, how close the track comes, where it's almost got a figure of 8 configuration here at the Nürburgring. So again, staying on board. This is looking at the corner where quite a few cars have been going off. This is the drop. Now look, forest in the background, that's the Nordschleife. Now we're going to the descent and then climbing up to the chicane.
We're following the Mercedes number 3, the Get Speed Mercedes. I think that car might still be on a set of wet tyres. Look, goes out of vision. We've lost them completely.
What car? Yeah.
Because watching him through some of the quicker corners, it looked to me like it was sliding as you would do if you're on a wet tyre. But it's difficult to tell there whether it is or not. So up at the high point of the circuit here at turn 17, clearly still a bit of mist over the top of the circuit, but you get down to the lowest part and it's pretty much dry. So try and follow the Mercedes down into turn 1. And if the car looks like it's yawing all the way through the exit, that would sort of indicate to me that it's still on wet. But didn't get much of a glimpse there. Maybe through turns 2 and 3, you get a better impression.
Okay, I tell you what, I think the number 72 Barwell Lamborghini might be on slicks, because Casper Stephenson has actually improved on the car's best time, even though the track has become wetter. 2 minutes 2.7. He's down in 46th position, so they hadn't set a decent time in the dry. That's why they're able to improve, but that's the fastest time we've seen since the rain came down.
So there is the Sky Tempesta, the 93 Ferrari, and it's one of those is it or isn't it moment. I think having a little eyeball around the front suspension, the brakes, just to give it a quick eyeball and check it's okay, to see whether they are going to go on. I think that might be Eddie Cheever behind the wheel, to see whether they would put on a set of slicks or they're just going to wait it out, a set of wets. Is that going to go back on too, or has it just come off? I think it's just been removed from the number 9.
Well, yeah, but this is the car that was bottom
yes.
of the charts, has actually just moved ahead into 49th position, but clearly it's been a slightly troubled session for Thomas Drouet and the gang at Boots and VDS.
Isn't that a magnificent looking motor? V8 all the way from Stuttgart. So Max Gertz having a word with one of the team members. So he's not going to be back in the car. He's having a casual looking morning.
No stress there.
No.
Thumbs up.
He's been there, done it, written a book.
Has he ever?
Stories.
Has he ever? In fact, his last couple of seasons had a real upswing again, you know, in terms of form. But it's about being with the right team, of course, as you move around as a pro driver. Right, Casper Stephenson. This is the car I sense may be on slicks. Yes, 2 minutes 2.7 has become 2 minutes 1.7. So for the young Brit, for the Barwell team, that seems to make sense.
I think that's a good call. I think that just watching the car coming through turn 4, it looked as if the car was on rubber that didn't have any grooves in it. And it's when in these conditions, when you're on wet, the car doesn't really bite, which is what you get when you've got a set of slicks on. So as long as you've got, going back to the old story, temperature and pressures, and you've got confidence, then even in sort of mixed conditions, you will know there's sufficient grip to be able to drive the car comfortably and, you know, at a good pace. So there, you can see on the racing line, the light colour on the racetrack, that's dry as a bone.
Yep, and the rest of the track that matches the grey flanks of that car, that's the bit you don't want to be on if you're on slicks. So again, as long as there's not too much traffic, this should be another improvement from Casper Stevenson. Early in the lap, but neat and tidy for the 22-year-old British racer. And again, John, it's been such a feature in the last decade. The average age of racers in this championship goes down and down and down as drivers effectively go karting maybe one season in single-seaters, and they seem to just take the GT route now. How times have changed.
Well, it is a different world, and I must remember back to my 16th birthday, and, you know, still at school, and driving around in my first car, which was a BMW Isetta, a three-wheeler, because in the good old days, if you didn't have a motorcycle, well, a motorbike was the option. So my family said, no, the motorbike on the road, but you can have a bubble car.
Keep your hair neat, John.
And I held a lap record in the bubble car from my family home to my school in Armagh. No one ever got within a country mile of it. It was outrageous how quick I could get back to school.
There you go. Do they still have the plaque on the wall in the big hall, the Great Hall?
No, it fell down one day. I was driving past at such pace. The vortex from the back of my Isetta just whipped it off the post and never saw it again.
That's the way it goes. Right, let's see. Now, yeah, almost 2 minutes flat there from Casper Stevenson for Barwell Motorsports, so I think that is absolute valediction for the team there, and good reasoning there. He's sharing with Gabriel Rindon and Patrick Gugela. They're running in the bronze class, and that's their target. And okay, although at the moment they're right to the tail of that class because they didn't set a good time in the dry, it's encouraging form for them.
Here is a star who's only going to get brighter and brighter, in my opinion. Gilles Magnus,
gold class leader.
Yeah. I mean, he came out of TCR racing, front-wheel drive touring cars, and has made the adaptation into a rear-wheel drive GT3 car absolutely seamlessly. So in 20th position currently, fastest lap of 158.3, but for what? I mean, will he go quicker before the checkered flag comes out? We've got 28 minutes, just under the 30 minutes.
But I guess importantly, he was fastest in the gold class. That's his class, 20th overall, ahead of the number 77 Mercedes of Yusuf Awega. Those are very, very close in times. What happens now is going to be interesting. It has no particular bearing. But again, tomorrow is due to be sunny here at the Nürburgring. I haven't been at the Nürburgring in sunshine for quite some number of years, so that'll be good to have. But right now, making the most of the circumstances for Sansalot Racing, gaining experience, gaining information for his teammates and the sister car as well. But look, the mist is still hanging low over the buildings, over the pits here, at the highest point of the circuit.
But the beauty of it is you've got total visibility from the exit of turn 17 all the way down into turn 1, which is where we're watching the 25 ID. And a little bit twitchy under brakes for Gilles Magnus, but every lap he gets to turn 1, he thinks I can go a bit deeper, Eventually you'll find you've reached the point where you've gone too far, and that's with the little sort of flinch at the front of the car. So that's probably about the limit. On board with Gilles. Indeed, just look at the windscreen. It's got, I don't know if that's the residue of rain or whether it is actually raining again. So the rain is beginning to fall, and it's just frustration because one lap ago he knew what he could do through turns 5 and turn 6. Now it's a reset. Just be aware that the track and again the curbing and the exit of 6 is going to be slightly more slippery than it was one lap ago.
Yeah, so in the last lap we had 4 cars. Thomas Neubauer, the 71 Ferrari from AF Corsa, Tom Gamble, the McLaren car 159, and 2 others, including Arthur Rougier, the 111 Audi, all doing 2 minutes flat. And then it's going to swing the other way, so you'll feel a little aggrieved if you just put some slick tyres in your car, sent your driver out, see what you can do. I'll tell you what, might have to come back in and put some rain tyres on.
I mean, we just talked a minute ago, the mist was lifting. Now it's descending again on part. It's now all around turns 17 and 18, that's the chicane, and then into turn, I'm just getting my numbers all wrong here, into turn 15 and 16, into turn 17. There's a bit of an anomaly because we've got turn 13, and then we've got turns 14, 15. Well, 14 is the tighter entry into the chicane, so that's deleted. So we now use 13 and then 15 into the entry into the chicane. It's an anomaly of Nürburgring.
Yeah, we could call it 16 corners around the lap, but come on, mate. Right, Tom Gamble, I was just mentioning it. Here he is in Garage 159, Garage 59, number 159 McLaren. And as you were mentioning earlier, it's about just breaking a little bit deeper, running deeper into corners, and now it's just become a little bit wetter again. You've got to wind it back, so the driver's constantly having to be on their toes. Tom going very nicely in his McLaren. He's 30th overall, but, you know, again, so many teams hadn't set a representative time on the dry track before the rain started to come in, so it's a confusion at the moment, but there is a clear try line, and in fact that little flurry of rain, certainly at the top part of the circuit where our commentary position is, looks to have moved on again.
It can catch you out because literally simply by the lap, it used to be a major problem on the Nordschleife because of the length of the lap and because of the altitude change, the lowest point being down at Adenau, and the highest point being here, basically at the start-finish line. But Tom Gamble goes on to complete another lap in the Garage 59 McLaren. So that car, as you pointed out, Bruce in 30th place. The sister car is in 28th, Adam Smalley behind the wheel.
And the best place for the McLarens is the one we've seen Mark Sansom driving around. It was number 158. That's in 14th position overall. But none of the times they're doing now are going to do anything apart from improving those that hadn't set a decent time when it was dry. They'll change outside the top 40.
But does he get 6th gear or not before he comes down into, no, he only holds 5th gear all the way down into turn 1, back into 1st gear. I've always wondered why drivers want to use 1st gear, because in these conditions, when you get back on the throttle, you're going to get a lot of torque, instant torque, potential wheel spin, particular back end snapping up. I'm old school. I like to use the torque of a motor rather than the peak of the engine power delivery, so I would hold 2nd gear, but you know, I haven't driven a current GT3 car and I can't really therefore speak from the first person.
Right, a couple of cars in the last few laps have actually run a little bit wide out of the final corner, and that's just probably because it was a bit greasy and they've been warned for going out the track and coming back in, getting it back over the white line onto the circuit. They want to stay off the curbs and the white lines as much as they can at the moment, but I guess if you just find the conditions have changed from the previous lap, then suddenly you're just not going to turn in. You will be going out beyond them, but don't make it intentional.
There is the normal line through turn 8, so that is the dry line. What we'd seen previously in turn 8, just a minute, it's not an easy run up through turn 9 and 10, the flat out S's, and that's not totally flat out, but it's getting close to it. Tom Gamble is able to pick up more pace as his confidence and the grip level of the car builds out through turns 12, then all the way through the flat out curve of 13. And you barely turn. All you do is you sort of squeeze your hand on the steering wheel and the car automatically goes through that curve. Then the big break up into 15, snap back to 16, watch the curve on the exit, and that's all done fine. So down and down into 2nd gear. And this is the final turn. On to start finish straight. But I would have thought that maybe snatching of 6th gear, but just coming up to the rev limiter, just hitting the rev limiter basically before he gets onto the brakes.
Looking a lot more confident out of turn 16. As I said, just a few cars running wide a few laps ago. Come to you, this is the car that was early on top of the charts. This is the car that won the Spa 24 Hours just a few weeks ago. Matthias Drudy being placed on board, but the early running was a Nicky team. And of course, Marco Sorensen, the 3rd driver in that lineup. The Vantage GT3, in fact, a new one's just arrived in Australia to compete in the Fanatec GT World Challenge down there. So as we said, a very popular car in 2024. Of course, it's at the front end of its evolution, whereas some of the rival manufacturers, they're at a different point in their sort of rotational cycle.
So Sedowetz goes on to the Aston, so they believe that track conditions, the 99, and the Ricardo Feller was 4th quickest. It's Ricardo Feller behind the wheel. This is a car in Hockenheim which was potentially a race winner, but something happened on the left front suspension as he came onto the start-finish straight, and then it materialized majorly in turn 1, and that was the race over for this car. But Audi's, I promise you, currently in the standing 2nd and 4th quickest, and they could be a handful in terms of being competitive over the duration of Sunday's race.
Yeah, it certainly could, and in fact, Ricardo Feller, along with Alex Arco and Christopher Haase, lying 4th overall in the Endurance Championship. So but Fella in particular has been going supremely well this year. So again, talking about the cycle of development, we're on various Evo versions of the LMS version of the R8, but it still seems to be in a sweet spot, and the twistier the circuit, the better it seems to go, and this certainly fits within that category.
It's one an amazing. I mean, we talk about Mercedes with the AMG GT3 and the SLS before that, but what Audi has built with the R8 LMS, I mean, it's just a phenomenal program. And the carryover, albeit that Audi is not directly involved, but the carryover from the knowledge and the years of experience. So those people that are on slicks might be thinking, oh, did we just go a lap too early? There's a bit of moisture on the screen of the Aston Martin, and that's a car that would probably be on slicks, so Matteo Rudi hasn't needed to use his wiper. He's still got enough visibility directly ahead of him. But I wonder where that rain is. Just, again, one little patch around the 5 kilometre so Nürburgring circuit up at the high point, and then drops down from the exit of turn 12.
Into the final 20 minutes, we started with low cloud and a dry track. It then stayed at low cloud, but then a bit of rain came in, and now drivers for the first time are experimenting, we feel, with dry weather tyres, with slick Pirellis out on this twisting circuit. Up the rise we go. One of the twistiest corners there is the chicane over the curbs, trying to stay off a little bit if they possibly can. But John, the final corner, turn 16, is the one where just so easy to go out over the curbs as you try to accelerate onto the start-finish straight.
Yeah, I mean, it's all you can see. It's the natural trajectory the car wants to take, and if you need to pull the car, tighten the car's exit, then that will tend to want to make the back of the car come loose. So it's really about your entry point, your apex, and getting the, I would call it the rotation of your car, whatever the brand happens to be, so that by the time you're at the apex, you're taking lock off, and therefore the car's coming out more or less in a sort of a lateral straight line, if that makes sense, rather than fighting the car and then having to deal with a snap oversteer on the exit.
Yeah, and if you run too deep on the exit of the corner, you end up in the gravel. Let's listen to this car's radio.
Okay, Cooper, you're doing a good job. You're one of the quickest on track. We go for one more push, and then we do driver change with Job.
Okay, that's the message to Marco Sorensen from Come To You Racing, and at the moment, he's just going to put together a fast lap after a slow one. He's just come out of the pits, but they're just cycling through their drivers, John. So again, when you've got a full pro lineup, you can afford to just keep chopping them in the car, in and out. They know what they've got to do.
Yeah, and when they make the pit stop, they should probably do a practice stop for Sunday's 3-hour endurance event. Marco Sorensen sort of not quite on the racing line, but not fully off it. And just doing a short shift, third to fourth, or second to third. It looks a bit mucky, the windscreen, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Right, he's just going through the very, very fast right-hander behind the paddock, and you have to climb up to the chicane. Again, the dry line on the right-hand side of the circuit, moving across. Stay off the curbs if you possibly can, but yeah, nicely balanced there from Marco Sorensen. Still quite a degree of bouncing as he goes over the curbs.
Oh, and he opens the door for the sister car to get through. And that was interesting, because I wouldn't have anticipated any Aston Martin being quicker than the number 007.
Maybe Marco's been asked to go and dry the track for the sister car around the lap. Right, AF Corsa, driver changing down there. This is the one that Thomas Neubauer has just climbed out of. And again, looking to see if there are slicks being put onto that one. Best of the Ferraris at the moment is the 51, the sister car. This is the 71, Thomas Neubauer out, and we'll see when he leaves the pit who got on board. Often on the timing screens don't get the notification clear until they go over the line exiting the pits. The initials should come onto the windscreen any second now. Still saying Neubauer, but yeah, it should flick over very soon.
Yeah.
Right, here's East Talent Racing. Austrian team making their debut in the championship, and good to have a new face on board.
Job.
Yeah, they've really got in and got stuck in. just doubling up. Then second fastest at the moment, Carol Bass, very, very talented kart racer, come for many years Lamborghini Super Trofeo racer, but a dab hand, whatever he gets on board, and I'm delighted to see him competing in this championship. Good to have a new team, and that's shared with Simon Riker and Albert Costa, our friend who's, I think this is the Audi, is his 5th manufacturer he's competed for in Fanatec GT World Challenge and Blancpain GT races before that.
Well, Albert Costa always brings entertainment, so just looking at the fastest times, this is the overall times, Bruce.
Yeah, that's when it was dry, and the car that was fastest, Jordan Pepper, has now got Marco Mappelli on board. That's in the pits, but we'll see with 15 minutes remaining in this 2-hour session what they're going to put onto that. V's Talent Racing, good to have them on board, good to have a different race livery, and I must say the purple and green works really rather nicely.
I think it looks great, and particularly that sort of side-on view. The colours work very well. It's very distinctive, and certainly from a commentator's point of view, the more distinctive the graphics are on a race car, the easier it is to pick it up, and you're not necessarily getting the best view of that car. But there we go, down the hill, Albert Costa behind the wheel, and Albert Costa was credited on that little box we had up at the fastest times as being the driver behind the wheel. It certainly looked like Carol Bass is behind the wheel right now.
Yeah, so
not Albert is out of the car.
And that also, those times would have been set very, very early on when the track was dry, but it's been a great level of attack from Carol Bass there over the course. A lot more confidence being seen. We've actually had a time, 1:58 by Ricardo Feller. That's the fastest time by far since we had the flurry of rain. Nobody else, I think, has got below 1:59. As I say that, suddenly Marco Wittmann.
Yes.
We heard the team radio for the Rover Racing BMW team. They were sitting in the pit garage. We heard it when Marco was sitting on board. He's done what they need to do. He's picking up the pace now.
Another driver's done a very good job, James Kell. He's also got below the 2 minutes in the number 3 Get Speed Mercedes, so he's done a 1:59.5. So there's 1, 2, 3 or so 4 drivers who currently, in these circumstances, conditions, have broken the 2-minute barrier. There's the Fricatelli Ferrari. The lap earlier coming out of turn 17, he got 2 wheels off the racetrack into the gravel trap, just caught it when we were looking at another couple of cars going into turn 1. This time it looks better. Down the bottom of the circuit, where's all the mist and what's all the talk about? Up high where we are, just hovering around, right, an uninvited guest.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to hang around here. Right, 98, the car we've just been mentioning, the BMW, has come into the pit, so we don't know how much faster Marco Wittmann can go, but he's put in the quickest lap. About 5 other drivers have also gone below the 2-minute mark in this changing conditions. Lucas Stolz, 20th overall, because he didn't set a good dry time. He hasn't been out until now. It was Jules Gounon and Fabian Schiller earlier on, but he's going very well indeed for Get Speed in the Mercedes. Right, Almenar Racing, looks as though they are going, well, there you go. You've got tread on the tyres.
Backwards and forwards on slicks, now putting wets on, and that may have just been a practice pit stop for all we know, but certainly the slicks came off and the wets go on as Tom Gamble makes his way up. Currently that car is 31st. It doesn't reflect. Tom Gamble makes his way into the pit lane as the sister car continues on. So it's the 158 McLaren that is currently, that's the Garage 59 entry of Mark Sanson, Christopher Solkett and Nikolai Schergaard, who is leading that charge in 14th position.
Yep, that was the time set in the dry. Quite a few of the teams, I think, may park up for the remainder of the session. But as I say that, look down the pit lane. There are cars coming out of pit garages from the dry out to maybe have a blast. About half the field out on the track. Anything under 2 minutes is good. And we've got a lot of people sitting at 2 minutes flat. Right, car number 48, the Mercedes that was going very well in the hands of Lucas Auer early on in the dry. It was good for a position in the top 10, and it's still in the mix. It's 10th overall in the charts at the moment. It looks fast in that Mamba race livery, standing still. But as you saw last weekend, people watching the sprint round from Hockenheim, it goes very well in the dry as well for Winward.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good lineup of drivers and such a well-prepared car. Really expecting big things from the Mercedes AMG team. Man Filter, Lucas Auer, Daniel Morad, Canadian driver, and Maro Engel, the eternal. Maro did something I hadn't seen at one of our rides before. His daughter joined him on the podium, but she was very smart. She got off the podium before the champagne spray.
Well, I like that. I think it's a lovely touch. But Mario, one of the busiest GT3 drivers in the world, and frankly, if you're a popular face, you can find yourself anywhere. You can clock up an awful lot of air miles now. GT3 is global, and you know, in your day, John, you might have raced 5 or 6 weekends on a trot, but he's one of the few that still does that now.
I mean, back in the old days, sometimes you call them the good old days, if you didn't race virtually every weekend from the beginning of the season, which was probably around about middle of March, sometimes it was earlier when you had South American races and South Africa likewise. But if you weren't racing 1 or 2 categories and virtually every weekend, you wondered why people weren't employing you. It's a different deal, of course, today because the priorities have changed so substantially. And you don't get this overlap of drivers doing single-seaters and then jumping into a GT car as would be now or into a prototype. You're either a single-seater driver, certainly a Formula One terms, or you're not.
Yeah, well, Formula One, of course, 24 Grand Prix in a season, which is way in excess of the sort of 16 or so used to do. But now, of course, if you're a GT3 driver, you could be doing 40 weekends if you plan accordingly. People will have you. Right, car number 36, another from the Walkenhorst Motorsports stables. Again, it's not a BMW anymore. Get used to it, Jones. They're racing Aston Martins in 2024. And beyond, so good to look up and down the order. This is Tim Creswick, British racer, running in the bronze class in, I think that makes him 5th or 6th position in class. Again, a driver looking for experience and gaining experience through the course of the season. Running in the bronze class, one of the AM drivers there. Still misty, it's still changing with every lap, a little more rain, a little less rain, a little more visibility, and down it comes again. Oh, what fun.
It's a frustration because you never know, am I on the wrong tyre at the right time, and the right tyre at the wrong time? But certainly in the case of the 36 Aston, I would imagine, well, why would I bother guessing? Because they'll probably be wrong. So track here, you know, dry line, slick tyres without question. Go offline, maybe at the top of the circuit. A bit more tricky, but you know, I would still stick with a slick tyre.
Right, we have had a change. Suddenly up into 2nd position overall, beating all the dry times bar one, goes Augusto Farfus, the 998 Rover Racing BMW. We've seen their brains trust in the pit lane discussing life, and clearly the senior driver with the 2 BMW juniors, Dan Harper and Max Hesser, has shown how it's done. 1 minute 56.777 seconds in the 998 BMW. So there is proof. Now with slick tyres on a track that's drying, with only 8 minutes to go, we're suddenly going to have a flurry, I would suggest, towards the top of the table. There it is,
there it is,
and
Harper's.
Beautiful.
Absolutely, and there you can see opportunity, right place, right time, got a clear run, and Augusto Farfus has capitalised on that, really caught others out, but Gilles Mangus right now in the number 25 Audi has gone purple. He's currently 23rd overall, but he's gone purple sector 1. So now the racetrack is very conducive to a single fast lap on a set of rubber that is probably fresher than maybe others that you might have had used to. There is the 25 Audi. Now he's got purple sector 1. Will he maintain that pace? And that's almost 0.3 of a second up on the best, second best, first sector time.
Yep, and Vincent Abril, we saw him getting aboard the 71 AF Corsa Ferrari. He's also flying, but again, these are drivers around 20th position in the charts. Their pride will dictate they want to step up the order, but Gilles Magnus sitting in 23rd position. You can see car number 25, the Sansalot Racing Audi. Fantastic first point in the lap. The second, third wasn't as good. What's the third going to do? And he goes into, well, Tom Gamble goes into 3rd place overall, and suddenly Gilles Magnus goes to the very top. 1 minute 56.043 seconds. Half a second down on the best dry time yesterday, but that is very impressive indeed.
Yeah, I mean, in 1st and 3rd sectors purple, middle sector fractionally down. But we saw that, and again, just watching through turn 2, the back end of the Audi, I mean, pushing as hard as he can. But that was a very good lap indeed by the Audi driver. And I suppose there'll be a little bit of flurry within the pit lane thinking, oh, we want to get out and prove that we're quicker than the 25 Audi. We've got just 6.5 minutes or so remaining in this 2-hour session. And I just wonder whether other entrants will decide, is it worth going out now? Gilles Magnus confirming that this Udo de Wilde in the 26th, the sister car, has gone 3rd quickest. So suddenly Audi's to the fore.
And only about half a dozen cars in the pits, so just as I was thinking, some of the teams might have thought, what is to gain? Obviously, the intel coming back from the drivers is the track is improving. It's a free practice session, but races are races. They want the cars to the top of the chart. Rover Racing, Philip Eng down in 22nd position. Here he is in number 98, but he knows his sister car fleetingly got up into second place. He's fallen back to fourth as other quick line times have come in. 1 minute 56.043 seconds, just set by the Sansalot Racing Audi of Gilles Magnus, just out of the chicane. One more corner to go for Philip Eng. Surely he's going to improve. He's fallen down to 24th as others go faster, but how good would this lap be? Will he get into the top 6? Will he go to the very top of the chart? I suggest not to the very, very top, but certainly close. The sister car is 4th. He slots into 5th place. He's just under a second down on the best time so far.
So no big surprise that BMW have found the pace. You know, they've done whatever hard yards they had to do in changeable conditions. Again, there's still round in entry to turn 2. There's not a huge amount of bite. There is the 46 now. It needs to get its sort of lifted skirts and get a move on. So where is that car? 35th, Valentino Rossi, credited with being behind the wheel. So he's gained 1.2 seconds in his first sector time, coming down through turn 13. The second sector time will click up once he crosses that white line now.
Well,
he's down. He's lost what he picked up in sector 1.
Oh, that's
I don't know why that would be.
No, nor would I, because I was saying if he continued at that rate, he might even get into the top 10, but clearly blotted his copybook. But again, it goes to prove the conditions are still a little bit tricky and easy to run wide. Target time, 1 minute 56.0. Marco Mappelli, second fastest. That was the dry time that got beaten. But we've got what's on the clock. 4 minutes remain. Where's the change coming next? Tom Gamble goes into 4th place from McLaren. And here comes Alessio Rivera, 10th at the moment. Is he going to improve from that as he crosses the line? No, stays in 10th place. Right, we've got 1.2 seconds from 1st down to 10th.
So 48, Lucas Auer. So he's got traffic to deal with, and that's not going to really assist him great. His personal best in sector 1, unless he gets a bit of cooperation from the Aston directly ahead. This is going to neuter his opportunities to personal best in sector 2. But I suspect the final sector will struggle. Actually, somebody's been off at the exit of turn 16. You can see his mark. There was a marker board on the exit, and that's been flattened. I'd like to see a bit of that, bit of action. So Lucas Auer gets out of the corner. Where does he end up? On 3rd. So that was an improvement overall, but could have been better if he didn't have to handle the Aston Martin in that 3rd sector. So Tom Gamble, who was 3rd, is now all the way down into 5th. And middle sector has cost him dearly. I don't know again whether that was traffic related, but it does give an indication. Now Udo de Wilde in the number 26 Audi, purple sector 1.
Wow, Sansalot Racing 1st and 4th at the moment, and as John pointed out, look out for 26, Ugo de Wilde. We're looking here at 32. We've seen it off earlier on, the BMW from Team WRT. It's sitting down in 20th position, but Sheldon van der Linde is better than that. His first sector is an improvement. He's 1.9 seconds down, and boy, look at that sector time from Ugo de Wilde. The first sector, best of everybody by the smallest of fraction. So out of the final corner, will Sheldon van der Linde improve from 20th place? I'm sure he will. Has to get into the mid 157s. 1 minute 58 does not do it.
So waiting for the Audi, currently 4th quickest. Last time, made up a great bunch of time in sector 1, but last time in sector 2. So I don't think we're going to see a last. Oh, he's gone into the pit lane, that's why.
Yeah, just about to say. So Ugo de Wilde dives into the pits. He won't have time to go out and do anything else because we've got just 2 minutes left out of these 2 hours. Everybody out on the track, bar just 3 cars, including Gilles Magnus, who's fastest. Sister car from Sansalot Racing, the fellow Audi, Ugo de Wilde, 4th fastest, also in the pits. The other one not playing at the moment is Michael Verhagen, the Dutch racer, down in 28th position. But everyone else is going for a final tilt. See a mere tight line there for the number 77 Mercedes. That's been going well early in the session, but for Arjun Maini, suddenly he's not in the top 10 anymore, that car, since he's taken over, and the slick times have come in. He's tumbled out of the top 20. I'm sure he'll pick up another place. No, but the times keep changing around and they keep getting faster. 1 minute 15 remains. Anybody else going to pop into the top 10? Max Hoffer just outside in 11th place, but for almost the entirety of the session, his car has been all the way down in the 40s. So Max has been chipping away. That was one of a handful of cars who didn't set a time a sensible time in the dry. So the Austrian racer can be very impressed with that time there for Trezer Attempto Racing.
Yeah, last weekend he was driving for the Liqui Moly Lamborghini, so versatile Austrian driver. Here we are on board, and we think it is Marcus Sorensen running behind, I think, the Barwell Lamborghini. So that's the view you get, and probably going to be in the pit lane. Well, to prove me wrong, he stays out, but takes a very, very unusually wide line. But what he's trying to do is straighten up. That was deliberate. He did that deliberately to straighten up this exit to maximise. This is one last push from Marcus Sorensen. So he's got a reasonable amount of clear air between himself and the Lamborghini up ahead.
Yeah, so the checkered flag will be out in 10 seconds time. He knew that. He knew he had this one final lap, and the important thing from his, he's getting the pace in the car, but he's got that clear track ahead of him. Yes, it's only free practice, but they want to get at least into the top 10. Checkered flag is now waved right across from our commentary position, and the last times coming onto the board. Almost everybody bar, in fact everybody bar one, has gone under 2 minutes, and the only one that hasn't is Mathies Lisbon, the young Belgian racer, and he's just 0.2 of a second. The wrong side of that may improve on this final shot. But the car that was fastest for ages, the 163 Lamborghini, Marco Mappelli on board, trying to cut his way through the traffic, but his dry time only, within the last 5 minutes has it been beaten?
Sure has, but I mean, he's having a last minute push, and he's going to get across the start-finish line with the checkered flag out. So this is his last run. Again, just watch the back of the Lambo sliding under power coming out of turn 17.
And as the checkered flag came out, I looked from the right in the commentary position. I can see the Schloss over Nürburgring village for the first time. But the main point was it started dry, it went wet, the visibility was poor, and only right at the end, when the crews in the last 15 minutes or so put slick tyres on, did the times finally come down and beat those early session dry times. But bragging rights to Gilles Magnus and Sansalot Racing. Has anybody got much more of a lap? Marco Sorensen could have a roll. We're riding on board with him in the number 007 Aston Martin, 12th at the moment. But look, he's improved his first sector time by 0.6 of a second. That is massive. What's he going to do in sector number 2? He's 1.1 seconds down. Surely at this rate he can get into the top 3 or 4 positions, but then that middle sector, the second of the 3 sectors for everybody, has been slower than before, but first and third sectors has been better. So let's see, can he improve? His best time on these slicks has been a 2 minutes flat. This is his last shot, and free practice is complete, but he improved his time on the previous lap, but does not improve overall. So just outside the top 10. But then again, it's a pro crew. They know what they have to do. And when we get to qualifying, unless the weather forecasts, all the weather forecasts are wrong tomorrow, then it will be dry and sunny tomorrow. And a chance to show both flanks, all the flanks for the number 35 Aston Martin from Volkenhorst Motorsport. Beautifully collected through the gravel and back onto the track. But again, there at the final moments, John, just showing how slippery things would be if you just got off that dry line that had developed.
Yeah, it didn't help me rode the curve a little bit aggressively going through, but the consequences could have been much worse. And if you start to spin, there's a lot of gravel to the left of the racing line as you go up through the left, the right. So you hit that gravel, that then just is a conveyor belt into the main gravel trap. And he did well to keep the car. There's Gilles Magnus, we saw, has still retained that quickest overall time, an excellent run indeed. So 1:56.043, and I think that'll bring a level of satisfaction to the 25, to the Santalok Racing team. Jim Pla, Paul Everard and Gilles Magnus, a very, I would say, comfortable and competitive driver lineup behind the wheel of that Gold Cup entry. So this is not a full pro entry, this is a Gold Cup entry. Taken quickest time in demanding conditions. Good job.
You know, we deal with such small margins in this. Well, just look at this car, dealing with small margins, out to the edge but not over it. That's perfect. That just when you get that layer of confidence that comes with a result like that, yes, it's free practice. We started with a little bit of sky. The sky came down. But at the end, Jim Pla, Paul Everard and Gilles Magnus, who set the time as the track dried, clear by 0.225 of a second for Santalok Audi team. Franck Pereira, Marco Mappelli and Jordan Pepper, their 163 Lamborghini was very swift in the dry and the damp as well, so look out for them. Then Lugiauer, Daniel Morad and Maro Engel, third fastest in their Mercedes. Alban Veruti, Michel Walshaman and Ugo de Vildo, who's a real star at the end in the bronze class, came into 4th place overall. We sent out 50 cars eventually to play, and largely they kept it on the island. The conditions were very, very difficult indeed, it must be said. But at the end, we had the flurry, slick tyres fitted, visibility lifting, and those quick times came in. But bragging rights for Santalot Racing, and at the very, very end, all but one car got below 2 minutes around the lap here. Conditions will keep on changing through the day, but the good news is for Sunday, we're going to bright sunshine. So, John, an interesting session, but always good.
Yes, difficult session for everybody, but they all got through it.
Well, coming back for more later. Do join us later. Thanks for joining us.